announcing the arrival of Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of International Islamic University, Malaysia. Distinguished Professor Dr. Osman Baka, Shaykh Al-Kulliya International Institute of Islamic Civilization and Malay World, ISTAC. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and very good morning to all of you. We shall bless our event for today by recitation of Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of IIUM, Distinguished Professor Dr. Osman Baka, Shaykh Al-Kulliya of International Institute of Islamic Civilization and Malay World, ISTAC. Ms. Michelle Kimball, the author of the book, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings and welcome to the book launch and discussion of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, a peacemaker for our time. ISTAC Monthly Book Discussion Forum and the launching of ISTAC Unit of Comparative Religion and Intercultural Dialogue. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and most merciful, all praises for Allah, the sustainer of the universe, the Lord of all worlds. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, who encouraged Muslims to integrate and strengthen their relations with all people from different faiths and to enhance cooperation for prosperity and sustainability for all mankind. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the organizing committee represented by ISTAC hopes that this program, the book launch and the discussion of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, a peacemaker for our time, and the launching of ISTAC Unit for Comparative Religion and Interculture Dialogue succeed in constructively contributing to your general overview for potentials and strengthening peace and intercultural dialogues in Malaysia and all over the world. It gives me a great pleasure and honor to call upon Distinguished Professor Dr. Osman Bakar, Shaykh Al-Kulliya International Institute of Islamic Civilization and Malay World, to deliver his welcoming speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. Yang berbahagia Emeritus Profesor Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of International Islamic University, IIUM, our distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ISTAC IIUM, I would like to welcome all of you to this half-day event, which we at ISTAC call our triple launching event. Triple launching event. So it's a very special day for us. But then every now and then it's always a special day for us. We are happy, first of all. Thank you, Tan Sri, for being here, giving us this moral support, and it's very important for us that we have you here. It all began with a very small idea, actually. Well, it's just small but big, actually. We wanted to launch this book, authored by my good friend, Michel Farah Kimball, an ardent fan of peace studies, and of course, someone who knows very well this Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba of Senegal. Her book, that was the idea at first, just to launch the book and have a discussion. But then other things developed, and we want to take advantage of that. The book appears to us as very significant to our efforts to create peace studies, conflict and peace studies. The book is significant to that. And we were in the process of establishing a new field of study at the level of unit here, because we are now restructuring ISTAC under the various niche areas. So one of these niche areas is comparative religion and intercultural dialogue. So what a good start that we can have through launching of this book, the peace studies, and conflict and peace studies would be under rubric of comparative religion and intercultural dialogue. We would like to study the issues of extremism and radicalism, terrorism, the issue of conflict and peace studies, inter-religious relations under that rubric, comparative religion. And we have many things in mind, of course, later on, because this comparative religion can cover under dealing with issues of environment and ecology, issues of the families, for example, approaches to the social institutions and so on. The idea is to have a comparative approach to these societal issues. So we added this program, to launch the unit of comparative religion. And we thought, okay, this is at the suggestion of Tan Sri, the rector. He gives us the encouragement. So why not the dialogue? We launched the unit. We are launching the unit on dialogue, not just launch, but let's have actual dialogue. So today, one of the events, one of the agendas is Muslim-Buddhist dialogue. We have quite often Muslim-Christian dialogue, but very, very rare that we have Muslim-Buddhist dialogue. So we are going to have today, as the last agenda of our event today, Muslim-Buddhist conversation. You say conversation because we want it to be a bit soft. Just to have a conversation in the beginning, see where we want to go. So we have Buddhist friends here. So I'm happy that Buddhist friends from a number of organizations are in this room, in particular including those from this Sakakokai, who are here now. So I hope this will lead later on to more meaningful, bigger programs that involve not only Muslim-Buddhist dialogue, but Muslim dialogues with other religions. I think but as a start, this one. I'm happy in this room today, students from Senegal, because Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, a well-known figure in Senegal. I don't want to say more of that because Sister Farah is going to talk about him. The only say that it's nice to see Senegalese students here coming to listen to their hero, their hero Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, a peacemaker for our time. It's very, very interesting perhaps for our non-Muslim friends here that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba is truly a peacemaker. He fought against the French through non-violent means. In fact, the French at that time just do not know what to do, because his approach reminds us of Mahatma Gandhi, of Martin Luther, and the others. So he is, for the Muslims, a very important figure at a time when the West, many people in the world, branding Muslims as troublemakers, just to put it like that. Yeah? It's violence. So I'm very happy with that. So these are the agendas today. To launch the book, or to be discussed later, and to launch the IISTAC unit of comparative religion and intercultural dialogue, and to launch the IISTAC monthly book discussion forum. I thank you once again, Tan Sri, thank you, and hope we will listen to your speech later, and also that you will launch this triple event today. Thank you to all of you for being here, and hope that in the near future we'll also be attending other events organized by us. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof. Dato, for your kind remarks. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of International Islamic University, Malaysia, to deliver his keynote address, followed by the launching of book authored by Ms. Michelle Kimball, IISTAC Academic and Research Unit in Comparative Religion and Interculture. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Yang dimuliakan pengurusi majlis, Profesor Osman Bakar, tuan-tuan yang utama, Tan-Sri Datuk-Datuk, hadirin yang dihormati sekalian. Terlebih dahulu saya mengucapkan terima kasih dan melafazkan syukur kepada Allah SWT kerana kita dapat berkumpul pada hari ini dalam satu majlis yang saya rasa amat besar maknanya kepada kita di universiti, dan juga dapat beramah mesra untuk membangunkan silaturahim di antara kita. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all thank Allah SWT for giving us this opportunity to be together in this very august building that all of us will be proud of. And also to thank Professor Osman Bakar and friends in IISTAC for giving me this honor to officiate this particular function. I guess this is the first anything official that I have to do with IISTAC. I've been coming in and out of IISTAC, but that's more on a regular basis. But it is something that's official in the sense that we're going to launch something today for the good of IISTAC and hopefully for humankind at the same time. Let me first of all start by acknowledging the founder of this August Institute, who have been working very hard for so many years, I think more than 20 years now, making it what it is. I think all of us who have been here will not miss the kind of aura that we've got in this building. It is planned very meticulously by Professor Said Naqib at that particular time, and all the thing that you've seen here is the labor of love of this particular person. So we would like to acknowledge that, and we want also to recognize the contribution, the tremendous contribution that is done for the university, and not only that, to continue this legacy that is left, to make sure that this building is not just a good building, but also a place where we can be substantively contributing to not only knowledge, but also to the good of mankind, as this university is known for, rahmatan lil alamin. On that note, I would urge my colleagues and all of us here to be very mindful of what this building stands for and what is it that it wants to achieve, that we are still struggling to make sure that we are in the right path in meeting the objectives and the mission of this particular building. I'm here to support you. You're correct, right in the sense that morally supporting you, because financially we are still also struggling to find out where else we can dig up and give you this financial assistance to make things what it is. Secondly, we have in the Senate, I think just a couple of days ago, agreed to your suggestion to return to the name that is originally made for this building, that is the Institute of Islamic Thoughts and Civilization. It was changed a couple of years before, but I thought we need to go back to what the original name is, and therefore ISTAC remain the name for the official name for this building. And you may want to invest some money now to change all the other names that has been leading to this place with, deleting some of the things that is not supposed to be there. And the idea was basically to go back to the idea of what this building is all about, rather than diluting it with many other agendas that is inherently in the building, in the name of the place, but not to put it out as though it is something new as we move forward. Thirdly, my reading of this place is we need to be the conscience of society. I think this building is just beyond publishing, writing, and also the academias, but we need to be the conscience of society, not only the Muslim Ummah, but the mankind as a whole, or humankind as a whole. I think this is an agenda that is set for this building, that we need to be the voice to tell the world what has gone wrong and what needs to be put right, to tell the world that what is false and what is true, and to tell the world also in no uncertain terms that we do not compromise on principles that bring about justice. I think these are the three things that I want you to captivate again, to make sure that ISTAC stands for everyone else, not only the Muslim, but also the non-Muslim, as far as justice, as far as truth, and as far as, humanity is concerned. That will be the general idea, and therefore the discussion that we're going to have today, I hope, will realign ourselves to where things ought to be in the situation that we're facing in the world today. There are many issues, and I think some of these issues has been put on the back burner for one reason or the other. We need to be very courageous enough to bring back these issues forward, because these issues matters to the life of people, sometimes in the millions, if not the billions. If we go on and ignore these issues because, quote unquote, it is not politically correct, and I think we are not doing our work. As academicians, we need to stay true to the kind of issues that we think it is important for us to make a better world. As we said again, the Rahmatan lil Alamin, and therefore to me there is no compromise in taking up this issue and putting forward on the table, and let's discuss this academically, and as you said, the conversation and making the dialogue to find out a solution on the way out, how to actually make the world a better place, as it were. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as I'm still the rector of the university, you will get my unwavering support for this, because this is what I think it is intended to be as far as ISTAC is concerned. On that note, we also want to, at least I wanted to make sure that Muslim is not marginalized in bigger dialogue around the world. I have been participants of some of these dialogues, but oftentimes we are not represented, or if we are represented in a very minuscule way. We are just a token sometimes in some of these dialogue. I think we need to take the bull by its horn and make sure that we are a substantive voice in trying to give our own viewpoints as far as the discussion at the global level is concerned. One thing that I think we want to suggest to you is basically how do we in ISTAC become a response to the World Economic Forum that has just been done maybe a couple of days ago. The World Economic Forum is a very influential forum, but they select people to go into this forum, the businesses, the politicians, and so on and so forth. But I'm quite sure from my counting that there's very little representative from the Muslim world in the context of Islam per se. And therefore, we need our voice to be heard. And I'm hoping that ISTAC will play that counterbalance role. And I am suggesting that we will now need to set up another forum that will be launched just after the World Economic Forum to give our kind of response to what has been said in the World Economic Forum, so that the Muslim perspective, the Muslims' worldview, And the people who are marginalized from this forum will also have a say at the end of the day. And therefore, each time, I hope when there is a World Economic Forum, ISTAC will also organize something of an equivalent so that we can have this platform to be shared among ourselves. Interestingly, the World Economic Forum this time talks about something that is unusual. It is not strictly economy, not the fourth industrial revolution that they suggested 3 years ago. This time they talk about the Garden of Eden. Sir David Attenborough talked about the Garden of Eden is no more. It is a metaphor, I think, is just right jarring in the context of the World Economic Forum. Yeah? And I think he has contextualized it in the sense that the economy that we're talking about is destroying the garden that is already here on earth. And therefore, this metaphor, Garden of Eden, is something which is appropriate, because when we see the Garden of Eden and we understand it from the Quranic point of view, you do not follow the rules of the garden, then you have to leave the garden. And I think we are at the stage of trying now to destroy the garden as we go into what we call the Anthropocene era, where human beings are basically destroying its own civilization after so many thousands of years, building it to the level that we see today, just because some of the values, some of the ethics, and some of the virtues that we used to profess for so many years has been neglected or taken over by some other ideology that is not in tune with what we are used to for the many years. And therefore, I think we need to talk about it, and we need to also give our counterbalance as far as this is concerned. Surprisingly, this time in the World Economic Forum, the idea of the fourth social revolution has been floated. They say you cannot just work on the fourth industrial revolution without remaking the social structure, health, communication, and all the rest of it that supports quality of life. And hence the idea of the fourth social revolution has been floated. And this is nothing new, because the Japanese had been talking about the fifth social revolution since 5 years ago. The Japanese understood what civilization is all about. It is not just about robots. It is not just about automation. It is not just about technology without putting human being at the center of this discussion. And I think as Muslims, we can agree on this. But there is no Muslim ideas in the context of the social revolution that we talked about, where human being, the Insanul Kamil, becomes a focus of discussion rather than the peripheral technology that we talked about so much, at least in Malaysia, in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. And therefore, I think we need to be that voice that brings in the Islamic aspiration out, so that we can have this discussion with anybody else who wants to know what the Islamic perspective is all about. On that note, I have been working quite closely with the United Nations University, which is based in Tokyo. I'm very impressed with the university because they've got another section called the Institute of Advanced Sustainable Studies. It is almost like IIUM and ISTAC. The UNU is IIUM, the IAAS is ISTAC. Yeah? What drives the United Nations University is that particular institute. It is a powerhouse of research, it's a powerhouse of knowledge, it's a powerhouse of pushing boundaries away from what it is known. One of the things that they've done very well is to create what we call the regional centers of expertise on education for sustainable development, which is supposed to be the university of the future. When you talk about sustainable development, no conventional university is able to deliver that, because it is all built on what we call the industrial revolution model. And you know that the industrial revolution now is giving us a lot of problems. And since 10 years ago, they've reinvented this new baby called the Regional Centers of Expertise on Sustainable Development that started with just 7 of those in 2005. Now there are about 200 of it around the world. And these are the new structures that looks at education in a different way, not just research and technology, but very committed to community engagement, very committed to question of values, very committed to humankind all over the world. And I'm hoping that IIUM will be one of the regional centers of expertise in the years to come. We are working very hard, and we're looking at the year 2020 that IIUM will be the first Islamic university that have this acknowledgement from United Nations University as a regional centers of expertise for sustainable development, so that we can also be part and parcel of that dialogue around the world to rebuild what the university is all about. I have a problem with the word university. For some of you who think that the word university is a neutral thing, it is not. The word university was brought in the 11th century when they built the University of Bologna under what they call the Magna Carta Universitatum. And the definition of university, there are 4 definitions. The 4th definition talks about the university in that context should be or will be the trustee of the European humanist tradition. At that particular time, if you want to be a university, you must be abided by this whole idea that you must promote the European humanist tradition. In my dialogue with them, when I was the president of International University, I told them there's no way we're going to subscribe to this thing, because we are beyond just European humanist tradition. And therefore, we need to expand this whole idea of what knowledge is all about in the context of what the international world wants us to do. But there's nobody arguing on this. The word Jami'ah, I think, is a better word as compared to the university in that small context of Eurocentricity. And these are things that I think we need to now voice out and make sure that the university represents the whole mankind rather than the provincial idea of what the university is that started in Europe some centuries ago. And one of the ideas that we are doing now in the university is to go back, to look at the first university in the world that is recognized by United Nations, built in 859, and that is the University of Karayin in Fez. The University of Karayin was built by a lady, a Muslim lady called Fatima Al-Fit. I mean, if you say that Islam do not educate their daughters and women, this is a university that is built by a lady. And she fasted every day until the building is ready to be the school or the madrasa at that particular time. We can never get any better examples than this. But yet the University of Karayin is not even in our radar. We keep on talking about these other universities around the world. It's in Europe and the US, as though this is the ultimate model that we need to follow. IIUM now is looking back and looking at how this University of Karayin exists for 1,200 years, still on a Waqaf model. Whereas we are going to a business model that is almost bankrupt. And therefore when Dato' Osman say, where do we get the money? I told them we need to rob a bank somewhere, because we can't find any money from the way of the Waqafs. Yeah? So we need to go back to what is the essence of this university and reinvent it. And I think this is part and parcel of the work of ISTAC and also IIUM, so that we can get what the university is all about. And Alhamdulillah, one of our new recruits recently, Dr. Ayman, from one of the Kulia, has just graduated from the University of Karayin. And he's now heading a study to understand what the University of Karayin is all about, to understand the model, what is the structure, so that we can begin to have an alternative structure. I'm not saying all is wrong now, but I think we need to have an alternative structure to refer to, so that when we run into a kind of a problem, we need to also find what are the other references. And there's nothing better than look at our own references, this Al-Karayin University, even before Al-Azhar was built. So those are the areas that I think we need to talk about as far as ISTAC is concerned. On that note, I think we have agreed to make ISTAC as an autonomous institute. You don't have to refer to the rector all the time. And in fact, I gave up my position as a chair for this institute to give it to another person. He's not here today, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Rashid Hussein, so that he has got the independence of thinking of where to take ISTAC along. If I'm sitting on this chair, there will be a kind of a conflict of interest between my interest and IIUM and also ISTAC. And I hope Tan Sri Rashid Hussein, with all his experiences and businesses and scholarly work, will be able to lead ISTAC in the way we want it to be, so that ISTAC could be the voice for Muslims and also beyond those structures that we know earlier. Yeah. Finally, I think I am very happy to be involved in this triple or 3-in-1 launching. 3-in-1 is something which is very common. You get this coffee 3-in-1, tea 3-in-1, and here is also 3-in-1. Malaysia is also 3-in-1. We have the Chinese, the Indians, and the Bumiputras and the Malay 3-in-1. And I hope this 3-in-1 will be a good formula for us. I'm really very honored to be associated with these activities today, particularly in the book launch that will be done and the discussion that will be done by Sister Farah Kimball. I am very happy to note that Senegal has been chosen as one of the field of study, not only in terms of its personality, but the whole Segal ambient, I think has a lot of things to learn from it. Yeah, so let us look forward to this particular discussion so that we can learn from other indigenous society as such as how they built knowledge and also how they built civilization in their own midst. We have been working, let me just digress a little bit. We have been working in the last few months with the indigenous population in Gombak. As you know, the indigenous population in Gombak, the biggest settlement in Malaysia, is just nearby our campus, where we have not touched it for the last 35 years. Only the last 2 months we've been in, and we found out the kind of knowledge that they've got is something which we are not able to imagine. There's a thing called kerchang, a kind of equivalent to our Rubik cube. You know, this Rubik cube that you are supposed to solve some of this problem. They've got this thing that is made of bamboo, and it's called kerchang, and it is supposed to be a problem solver for people who wants to think beyond what they're just knowing about today. So they give me this particular, see, can you solve this problem for me in 3 steps? With all the experience that I've got in this world of academia, I am not able to solve that. Yeah. And they've got not one of those, they've got 10 of those. And they use this to train their children at the age of 6 on how to think beyond just the ordinary linear thinking. They recognize you're going to live in the jungle, and the jungle has no one way or one rules that you need to follow. They need to be very creative, they need to be very courageous, and they are already thinking of how to actually make this thinking process at the age of 6. And this 6-year-old guy can solve the problem, and here is an old professor with all the names that you've got in front of you are not able to do so. So suddenly, this group of people that we call uncivilized has got a power of thinking that is beyond what we have got in the conventional way of knowledge. We are going back to them. We are starting, inshallah, in the next 2 months, what we call the jungle school, to learn the indigenous wisdom and the indigenous knowledge that is brought into this jungle so that we can also make the connection with them. And this is one of the other things that we are trying to work. And therefore, indigenous societies around the world, particularly Muslim societies, cannot be just marginalized and cannot be just forgotten because they are not mainstream, as it were, and therefore they are not useful in the context of what it is today. So I am very happy also to launch this ISTAC unit of comparative religion and intercultural dialogue. There is something that personally we also been working with our partner, the Soka Gakkai Group, which is a very organized Buddhist entity in Malaysia, not only in Malaysia, around the world. They've got 2 universities, one in Tokyo and one in the United States, also, encouraging this dialogue among other group of people around the world. And I'm happy that we are also going into this intercultural dialogue, particularly with a group of Buddhists. I think Buddhist is the next largest group after Muslims in Malaysia, and I think it's only fitting that we engage them in a dialogue. And so far, my discussion with Suka Agake, there's so many common areas as far as Buddhism and Islam is concerned. I have a little bit of interest in a selfish way, because some of the books that I read, my name Zulkifli comes from the three Arabic word kaf, fa, lam. That's Kifli. Yeah, Zul, I was meant person. I don't know whether my Arabic is right, but the person from Kaf Falam. And Kaf Falam actually is the name they say is connected to a place called Kafila Vastu. And Kafila Vastu has something to do with Buddha and Buddhism, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah? And therefore, they say Zulkifli could be an equivalent of Buddha in the context of, that understanding. I'm not too sure whether I'm saying this right, but I'm trying to investigate. Yeah, if Buddha is one of the prophet of Islam, then what will be the equivalent? Yeah, so it's a kind of a study that I'm doing on my own. I'm still reading it, but this is something that maybe we can come to a decision after having this conversation and dialogue. At any particular point in time. And this dialogue, I think, can also be open to any other issues that we are facing around the world today. Over tea, we are talking about what is happening to Muslims in China. We have been reading many unhappy news about what's happening in China at the moment in time. Mosques has been destroyed just because they have got the Kuba rather than the Chinese architecture. Yeah. Youngsters, we were told, at the age of 12, if they carry anything that represents the Quranic thing, whether in a CD or in your handphone, you can be called up. Yeah, and there's an equivalent of quote unquote a Guantanamo in China that now houses more than 1 million Muslims. We don't know whether this is true or whether it is hearsay, but nobody is saying anything about it. Maybe for political reason, maybe for diplomatic reason, but we as academicians do not belong to all those things. Diplomacy is as good as it is, but the truth needs to be said. And therefore, I am also suggesting that the next intercultural dialogue may be something that we need to talk about China, rather than just one road, one belt. Yeah. What about one road, one belt? The Silk Road was at a particular time cutting across all the Islamic regions of China. Are these still happening? Are these still happening the way it was, where you leverage also the Islamic identity and Islamic culture as part of the Silk Road and the new civilization? Or are they destroying it? These are issues that I think we need to know, because then we can put things right the way it should be, academically speaking, without the politics, and without all other things that, give self-interest to anybody. I think this is, again, the role of ISTAC, and I hope we will be able to do this in the near future, because the pressing needs of this cannot be underestimated as it is today. Last but not least, I think this monthly book discussion forum is something, again, that we look forward to, because there are many books now that is out that we need also to bring back into the community. The community are not accessible to many of these books. Some of these books are written in English, sometimes academic English that nobody's understand. So I hope we can digest it and make it into something that is palatable, and then publish it in the newspapers. I am hoping that we can also have a column in some of the newspapers. In USM, there is the Sempress that writes every week for the New Straits Times. I think we can look at other media, or worst come to the worst, we have our own portal that talks about what this book discussion is all about, so that it could be shared and everybody could know the content of this book that is so precious and so important for us to move forward. Last but not least, I was just reading today the article about the 18 years of war in Afghanistan, written by an award-winning journalist, Eric Margolis. I think some of you who have been following him. He's a very, very, quote-unquote, a provocative, controversial journalist. and say something that sometimes does not click in our mind. Yeah. And in his discussion today, when he was talking about the 18 years of war that had been waged by the United States in a country called Afghanistan, and investing so much money to the trillions to bomb a place that do not even have an economy, that's worth the trillions. And we do not understand why there's so much investment made to demolish this country years after years. And one of the statements that he made that captured my interest was basically, for him, Taliban is not a terrorist organization. For him, Taliban is a nationalist Islamic organization that has been fighting communism, that has been fighting foreign domination, that has been fighting drug cartel around the world. The drug cartel that is flourishing in Afghanistan are the works of the CIA and the Americans to finance the war in Afghanistan to other neighboring countries. Whether it is true or whether it is not true, we do not know. But I'm hoping that in your forum of 7th and 8th, if we can call Eric Morales here to give his own perception of what the war in Afghanistan is all about, because I think this is a war that is overdue, that must stop. And if we can call him here and listen to him, and maybe then we can also take a position of where we need to talk about not only the war in Afghanistan, but the war in Yemen and the war everywhere else that is killing the Muslim for no good reason at all. And I think there is something that we also need to take on very, very quickly so that we can save as much life as possible, as Islam wants us to in the context of the Maqasid al-Sharia. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I've given you an array of things to think about. This is the beginning today, and I hope this can be something that we can craft out so that ISTAC is recognized as a respectable center, not only in the academic world, but also as a conscience for the world that we can speak out for people who need to be defended in the context of Islam and the principle that Islam promotes, that is peace and justice. So on that note, I am very happy to launch this triple events that we have today, and hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us on this very sincere niyat that we want to make ISTAC not only the way it is crafted to be, but more importantly, to bring back the spirit of Islam in the world to come as we move ahead in the 21st century and beyond. On that note, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Yang Bahagia. We would like to ask you to remain here to present a token of appreciation. I would like to call upon distinguished Professor Dr. Osman Baka, who would like to present a token of appreciation and graduation to our Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of IIUM. And Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of IIUM, would like to present a token of appreciation to Ms. Michelle Kimball. Please welcome. Thank you very much, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, for your encouragement for ISTAC and give us the positive energy and the compass on where ISTAC is heading and how we can move forward. Without further ado, we would like to talk today about Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, who's a religious leader who produced a prodigious quantity of poems and tracts on mediation, rituals, work, and Quranic study. He led a pacifist struggle against the French colonial empire while not waging outright war on the French like several others had done. We would be starting with our forum for today that is going to be about the book title Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, A Peacemaker for Our Time by Farah Kimball. This would be chaired by Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Muhammad Yusuf, the Deputy Dean of Academic and Research Unit at ISTAC. And now I would pass the mic to Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Muhammad Yusuf. He's welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are a bit behind schedule, so I will need to reorganize the timing for this session. But nevertheless, thank you for the invitation, Sister MC. Today, we shall discuss the book Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, A Peacemaker for Our Time. And it's a pertinent time to discuss this book. As I woke up this morning, there was news of a bombing in Mindanao, yes, of a Roman Catholic church, where 20 died and 81 were injured. And it's especially important that we discuss a figure such as Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba because of his non-violent resistance approach, which is a rarity in the Muslim world, especially in light of the dominance of such negative spotlight that has been given to extremist or terrorist organizations such as ISIS. Especially this is also pertinent because of the fear of foreign fighter returns. Yeah? The foreign fighters returning from the Middle East as ISIS begins to crumble there. So there's a legitimate fear of it coming to this region. And part of that fear was, in a way, highlighted as to what happened yesterday or today in the news. For this discussion today, I will, of course, first introduce or present or allow the author, Michelle Farah Kimball, to do a presentation, a 15 minutes presentation, more or less, of the book before we go to the respondents from ISTAC, yeah, Prof. Kamal Onya, Kamarul Zaman, as well as Dr. Imtiaz Yusof. Before that, allow me to read a bit from the sleeve of the book by way of introducing Michelle Farah Kimball. The author received her Bachelor of Arts from the University of California at Santa Cruz with honors. She pursued graduate studies in Near Eastern Studies at University California, Berkeley, and received her MA from Santa Barbara. She compiled the book Muslim Women Throughout the World and annotated bibliography and has written articles on Rumi, Sohrawardi, Islamic spirituality, and women in Islam. Kimball founded the International Peace Project, and in the 1990s, she took up the cause of the plight of the Iraqi people, especially children, suffering under sanctions and bombardment. She made an aid trip there with 80 others to show support and deliver medicines while risking imprisonment. Kimball wrote articles about her experiences, including Let the Children Live, and made media appearances, gave lectures, and organized many events focusing on global peace initiatives. Kimball also lectured at interfaith gatherings with fellow Christian, Jewish, Hindu, and Buddhist colleagues, and hosted Chaldean Catholic Archbishop Gabriel Casal and organized events to support his work in Iraq. She is one of the first signatories to A Common Word Between Us and You, an open letter by Islamic scholars to Christian leaders calling for peace and understanding. She also produced a CD of mystical chants dedicated to world peace. While committed to working for peace, she hosted Senegalese president candidate Sheikh Abdoulaye Dieye, who introduced her to the work of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. So with this, I invite the author, Michelle Farah Kimball, to present her book.
Okay, it's got to be red. Okay. This is Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. He was born in 1854 and died in 1927. But to this day, you see his image all over Senegal and West Africa, on walls and buses and on trees, and photocopies are put on shops. And he's a living presence, even though, you know, he died in 1927. He had a tremendous impact on the country of Senegal and its people. So there are mystical and magical stories that abound about him and what he did. So why is he still important today? Well, just to give a brief introduction, I came to know about Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba through this man, Shaykh Abdoulaye J, who was a follower of the teachings of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, but he was also a member of parliament in Senegal. His son now is a member of parliament, and he happened to be running for president of Senegal when I met him. And he was globetrotting around the world, speaking at the United Nations and World Conference of Religions and other places, and often about global peace. I was heavily involved in peace activism at the time, and he was also speaking a lot about peace around the world. And I had just come back from war-torn Iraq, as you mentioned, on a peace humanitarian aid mission. So when he related to me the story of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, this Muslim Gandhi type figure who lived in a time of foreign domination, invasion, and oppression, much like we see in war-ravaged countries today that are reeling from violence. But the thing is, he was totally dedicated to bringing peace through and social change through nonviolence. And Shaykh Abdoulaye J told me much more, but it seemed an amazing story that people needed to know about. So as a peace activist, I thought I should let people know about this figure. And I began gathering information. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba had a philosophy, much like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, regarding the power of nonviolence. He was also a great literary luminary as well. And like them, Bamba was imprisoned, and he was not in the favor of the governing powers that be. And like them, he was religiously and spiritually inspired, each of them from a different religious tradition. But Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba believed that the greatest battle was with one's self, with one's own soul. And he taught the importance of seeking, knowing, and standing up for the truth, not in a confrontational kind of way, but by living that truth. Now, around the time that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was born in 1854, slavery was supposedly ending, but the psychological scars of this still ran deep, as millions of people had been extracted from Africa. And so now, as wounds were still healing, the French colonialists, led by early on by this man, Louis Faidherbe, were infiltrating to pacify Senegal. And not only Senegal, but with a plan to dominate Africa from the west coast, where Senegal is, to the east coast, to gain control of valuable resources and to avoid taxes, but also they wanted to benefit African people by introducing French culture through their civilizing mission. So they introduced the French language and French schools, and they diminished the number of Islamic and native schools. So they hoped to transform Africans into French men and women, even giving citizenship to some people, French citizenship, that is. And, but obviously there was resistance to this kind of foreign encroachment. And there ensued many battles, not just by Muslim jihadists, but also traditional African chiefs. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was not from a family of warriors, but he was from a family of educators. And he devoted his life to gaining religious and spiritual knowledge at the feet of sages, some of whom were his own family members, because he came from a family of scholars. But he witnessed the battles of resistance against the French colonialists, the killings and the bloodshed, and members of his own family were kidnapped and killed. His own sister at the age of 9 was kidnapped and sold into slavery. These horrific events continued while he attempted to pursue his studies. As he grew older and gained more knowledge, and when I say older, well, he was quite young at when these big battles were beginning, but even in his early 20s, he had started to write booklets and became quite popular. So he often versified texts of the classical Islamic texts and versified them into beautiful poetry that people would chant to know better. And he became so popular in sharing this knowledge that crowds of people came to learn from him. Over time, he developed a system of education in which he incorporated spiritual purification according to the concept of ihsan or tasawwuf in traditional Islamic studies. Now, he also included all the other aspects of Islamic studies, but ihsan was particularly important, that he wanted people to actually incorporate this into the whole educational system, which he created. And ihsan, as you know, is to beautify the soul. And through guidance, through religious and spiritual practice and guidance. So Bamba had a great effect, but he never set out to resist the French colonialists, but he did not physically oppose the French in what they were doing, but he peacefully sought to educate people. He and his representatives established schools and mosques. In every little town that they would go to, they would establish a school and a mosque. And crowds came to them to learn, because Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba exuded wisdom. And, but with the amount of people that were coming to visit him, the French became very suspicious, because they couldn't tell the difference between people gathering around a wise man or people gathering around to perhaps create an army to fight them. So they were already fighting and killing whatever opposition came to them, and they had the military might to stop the opposition. And there were raging battles of Maba, Jahuba, Lat Dior, and others. But Bamba was principled in his stance, and he was not subservient to the French in any way. But to the French people, it was an affront to them that Bamba, Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, declared that he recognized one God as the ultimate authority, when they viewed themselves in the role of the highest authority of the land. So, in fact, the French posted the following telegram back to France from Senegal. Urgent, Ahmadou Bamba is making it known that he recognizes no other master but God and refuses to be summoned for an interview. Situation particularly grave. Now, that was a very serious statement by the French at the time. So the French decided to keep Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba in their radar. They surveilled him. And when they learned he went on retreats outside of their area of control, they became very suspicious. Now, in his retreats, he was deeply inspired, not to go and fight the French, but to set out to find a sacred city, a blessed sanctuary for which he said he had permission from God to establish on earth. And he set out into the wilderness alone, inhabited apparently by lions and hyenas and panthers, in search of the divine light of this sacred city, which did not yet exist on earth. Now, he was to name this city Touba. And Touba means blessedness or happiness. And it's mentioned just one time in the Quran. Alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati Touba lahum wa husnu ma'ab. Those who attain to faith and righteous deeds are destined for Touba, that is happiness, blessedness, in this world and a beautiful place of final return. Now, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, would be reciting the Quran various times, people would say, "What is Touba?" Because this is this very special place that people who do good deeds and who have faith will go to. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, answered, "Touba is a tree that is in paradise. The extent of its shade is equal to a 100-year walk, and the clothes of heaven's inhabitants originate from its flowers." So Bamba was making a connection between the divine Touba, the transcendent spiritual Touba, which is promised to people who do good, and the horizontal plane of the earth. And he was establishing this potential connection. And he was able to discover the location of Touba in his roamings in the desert, in the savannah, excuse me. He had dreams with flashes of light when he was near the place, and he found a baobab tree in the location where Touba would be. And according to oral history, he established a mosque in the baobab tree, first provisional mosque of Touba. As he continued to gain popularity, many of the village chiefs became exceedingly jealous of him, not just them, but other people too, members of his family even. The chiefs began to kind of side with the French regarding this troublemaker, Ahmadou Bamba, and they slandered Ahmadou Bamba, and they said that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was dangerous, and he had weapons, and he was planning a militant uprising against the French, which was not true, because Ahmadou Bamba already was very peaceful and dedicated to nonviolence. So in 1895, the French decided they didn't want to deal with this man anymore. they decided to come and arrest Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. So escorted by 200 soldiers and cavalry on horses, they came and they forced Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba from his peaceful home. And for all anyone knows, he could have been being taken to his death, because the French usually would not allow people to live who were in opposition to them. But in that moment, when Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was taken by the soldiers, he felt he was divinely protected. In fact, he desired to reach the high spiritual stature of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, who faced their oppressors at the Battle of Badr, B-A-D-R, where the believers were outnumbered 3-1, and apparently by divine intervention, they prevailed. But he wrote beautiful poems in honor of these companions, who must have had exceeding courage, high level of courage in order to be able to do what they did, to be willing to go out and die for the truth. His exquisite poetry, what Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba writes, is really quite beautiful to listen to. It's mesmerizing, and it's not like other Muslim music you've probably heard, Arabic or other Muslim music. It's got a distinct African cadence and rhythm to it. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba's prayer to achieve nearness in rank, in spiritual rank, with the companions was fulfilled as he wrote about that moment of being escorted away by these soldiers to prison. So he writes, "I was walking with the truthful when I walked into exile. I was with the righteous people of Badr, while my persecutors were confident I was in their presence. He knew that he was not a prisoner of the French colonialists inwardly, that he knew he was going to something that may be treacherous, but that which would bring him closer to God." So he was escorted to court for a hearing, and he was there for several hours, and the authorities came to the conclusion that he was menacing, troubling, and disturbing the tranquility of the region. So they decided to send him so far away he could have no influence in Senegal anymore. And perhaps they were, again, sending him to his own death for all anyone knew, reminiscent of people sent off on slave ships never to return again. They put him in chains, like they used to do with the slaves, and exiled him and shipped him off on an old Portuguese ship to where he didn't know where he was going. Even on the ship, he didn't know where he was going, nor did his followers know where he was going. This is a painting done much later showing the angels supporting him and depicting a story of him praying on the water. So he was sent to the French Congo, Gabon, 3,000 miles away from Senegal. Now that's a tremendous distance, especially back then in 1895. So who's to think he would come back? And people they had exiled there before, in fact, did not come back alive, such as the Guinean war chief Samori Touré, who died of pneumonia there. So the French expected that that was going to be the end of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, and he would not survive this trial. So I'm skipping ahead for time, but he managed to stay alive in Gabon for 7 years, suffering trials and tribulations so difficult that he said he wouldn't even write about them. And he resided in solitude and in unsafe conditions without succumbing to famine and fatal endemic diseases that other people had succumbed to there. Nonetheless, he was able to write inspiring poetry while there. So his dedicated followers, when they found out that he was indeed alive and he was there, they solicited to have him released. And after 7 years in the jungles, he was able to return to Senegal with allegedly trunks of writings that he had done. So when he returned to Senegal, there were crowds of people that came around to see who was this man who was able to survive 7 years in the Congo, miraculously, it seemed. And he again began to draw crowds, a lot of crowds of people coming to learn from him. Especially, you know, he had these beautiful poetry of wisdom and songs. So within 6 months of his return to Senegal from Gabon, the French decided to exile him again. Yet this time to a completely different place, and that was to the Sahara Desert in Mauritania. Now, the Sahara Desert was a completely different kind of place because it was known to have amazing spiritual and religious leaders and great scholars of Islam beyond what Senegal had. And Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba decided to go a little bit deeper into the Sahara, and he was inspired with and received the weird or the special prayers and formulas and verses of the Quran specifically for this new spiritual order that he was founding. So this exile for him, whereas the other one was one of trials and tribulations, this exile for him was one of consecration, of his purpose in life. And it was exceptional that here Arabs came in the middle of the desert, came to learn from him, a black man, that they encouraged him they acknowledged him as their spiritual leader. And they did not look favorably on Senegalese because they considered themselves more noble in their religious knowledge. So after several years of being there, once again, people solicited for him to return to Senegal. And he was able to return, and the French, when he came back, the French again put him under house arrest. So he was not allowed to, he was only allowed to stay in certain places, and he had to get permission if he wanted to go anywhere or travel anywhere. So he was not allowed to be in his blessed sacred city of Touba, which then was just a little village. This is Touba now, which is a lot different. This was built on the sacred site that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba had searched for and found in the savannah, and upon which he recited the prayer of Abraham, "O God, make this city a place of peace and serenity." So it was developed and became the second largest city in Senegal, and today it has a population of over 500,000 people with a yearly pilgrimage of millions of people, and it's the biggest pilgrimage in all of Africa for Muslims. And essentially, when the pilgrimage occurs once a year for several days, the entire country is affected because so many people are headed to Touba. So there's traffic jammed up for miles, and people jump on buses and hang from the sides of cars and climb on top, whatever they can to get there. The president and the political leaders and members of spiritual orders travel to honor the sanctity of the place, Tuba, and its founder. And even members of other spiritual orders, the Tijaniya, the Qadiriyya, they understand that this was a holy man and that he gave a great gift to the people of Senegal. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba said he recognized that this city would be a great city. And he said that people of many walks of life, he said, people will come from the lands and the seas, and I will not cause any harm to them. Essentially, it has happened that people of many walks of life travel to the pilgrimage from other countries. And he's gradually becoming more well-known in the United States and other places in the world. Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba and other spiritual leaders of the time in Senegal helped to effect tremendous change without ever picking up weapons. And I'm skipping through a lot, for time, but you can, read the details in the book. So Senegal remains one of the few African nations to have not experienced the great turmoil of other African countries. And Bamba believed that by traversing the spiritual path, according to the precepts of revealed religion, revealed knowledge, one gains discernment of the truth. And by this, people become empowered within and less likely to be subject to foreign domination or any kind of domination. So through his writings and teachings, based on the Islamic and intellectual spiritual tradition, he and other spiritual leaders in Senegal helped bring about a cultural and spiritual revival in spite of the French presence. Let's go to the next one. Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba's philosophy was inspired by the Quran and the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And he came earlier, but his philosophy echoes the conviction of Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi regarding the power of nonviolence. Gandhi's approach directly influenced Martin Luther King, who argued that the Gandhian nonviolent philosophy provided the only morally and practically sound method open to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom. So Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba believed that he had a mandate from God to not harm anything. When the French authorities sent a spy disguised as a follower to check on him before he was exiled the first time, and because they had heard he was gathering weapons to foment rebellion, which of course was not true, he intuitively knew the spy's agenda and said, I have agreed to certain conditions with God, such that even if the Mahdi, that is the prophesied end-time redeemer of the world in Islam who comes back with the Messiah, so he says, even if the Mahdi descends on earth, I would not assist him in battle. I will not kill neither scorpion nor serpent, nor anything that is living. According to the direction I have taken, it is absolutely forbidden for me to shoot from a weapon, such that even if the Mahdi were to arrive, and if I were to take up arms, my mission would be lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Farah. Now we go to the first of our respondents, who is Professor Dr. Kamaronia Kamaruzaman. She is a professor of comparative religion and amongst the pioneers of IIUM academic staff in May 1983. I think I was 10 at this time. She still serves the university today as the head of the Unit of Comparative Religion and Intercultural Dialogue. Prior to this, she was with the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion. She's also the designer of the Comparative Religion discipline in IIUM. At IIUM, she was also the founder, director of the International Center for the Alliance of Civilization, which was allied to the United Nations Alliance of Civilization from 2012 to 2015. And then as Deputy Director of the International Institute of Muslim Unity from 2015 to 2017. Professor Kamaonia was also the chairperson for the NGOs meet of the first World Muslim Women's Summit and exhibition, WISE 2016, organized by IIUM and the World Islamic Forum, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, as well as various Malaysian ministries. This was in September 2016. She was also key resource person of the Harmony Center of the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, or MUIS, in 2012. With that, I present Professor Kamaonia to deliver her response.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning to my Buddhist friends. I'm meeting new friends and saying hello to old friends. It's been a long time. They were here actually for our Muslim Buddhist discussion on family ethics some time ago. Before I start on this, I want to thank, of course, the rector for gracing our occasion and Sister Farah Kimball for enlightening me on this. But allow me the opportunity here to say something before I go into the book, to thank Professor Zol, the rector, for that type of support and promises and inspiration. I am the firstborn of ISTAC. I was the first student, and I remember those days when Prof. Nakib Al-Atas, I was the first student because of destiny. My professor, supposedly to be my supervisor, I was in temple with Prof. Usman Bakar. He was assassinated together with his wife. I think you know about this, 1986. The nights before they were assassinated, during the morning, the night, we call her Mama, dearly loved, Professor Lamia Faruqi wrote me a letter. I was then studying in Tunisia to catch up with Arabic and English. And nobody dared tell me of the incident, not my family, not my friends, until I got a telegram from Professor Kamal Hassan to inform. And of course, like everything went silence for me. I refused to go back, but I was already embarking on scholarship like Prof. Osman with Professor Al-Atas, attending his talks. I used to tell him, Prof, I'm afraid of you, because he has that type of structure. I'm afraid of you, I don't understand your writings, but I want to learn from you. And when I first walked into his room, he looked at me, he didn't say anything, and he laughed. And we had lessons in his house. So when this tragedy happened, I refused to go back. It was too traumatic, and I had the support of Prof. Kamal Hassan. He knew what I went through, because we always have very personal relationship with our professors. Prof. Osman will be able to watch with Al-Faruqi especially. So when the idea of ISTAC came out, he rushed ISTAC so that I would be in time able to take the scholarship. So I have this great gratitude to Prof. Al-Atas. So I enrolled, as I enrolled in IIUM before it was officially established. I have confidence that it's going to float. It is my mission there. So I would like to thank you, Prof. Zol, for giving back us the light. It had been very difficult for us. And on behalf of my siblings, some of them are here, sorry if I get moved. The last few years were very painful for us. You have given us back the light. On behalf of my siblings, I thank you. May Allah bless you. To you and Prof. Osman Bakar, who has given back the life of ISTAC and bringing back the soul that was taken away from it. And on behalf of my professors, my intellectual parents, which I thank you also. They'll be very happy and you have the blessings. And most of all, on behalf of Prof. Al-Atas, at this time in his life, at this age, above 80, this is the thing that he really needed. We have our greatest gratitude. I'm sorry, Sister Farah. It's just that I need to say this, yeah? And I think I speak for everybody. And we have all the supporters of and friends of ISTAC here. Tan Sri Hamid. Hamid Aga, sorry, I'm getting Hamid Alba was there when ISTAC was officiated in the presence of the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, and Altas. I'm so happy he is again here with us. He's always been with us. That he heard it from you straight away. So he's another Tan Sri Rashid Hussein caliber for ISTAC. The last time I was trying to fish them into ISTAC, alhamdulillah, I managed. So thank you very much. And now I'll go into this thing. For Sister Farah Kimball, I'm grateful for you to have written this book. Personally, the African countries is something very remote for me. So I took some time as I read through and I traveled through the life of Bamba, let's just call him Bamba. As I traveled through his life that you presented, I also traveled through the history of Africa. Now let me just share this with you. Africa as a community, Africans, to Malaysians are very remote. In fact, my father's generation hardly see an African. It was only when IIUM was set up, and we have many African brothers, people got excited just seeing them. And the students brought them to the kampung, and they were pampered. And then, of course, when Malaysia embarked into this educational hub, more of Africans came here. So as I read through your book, I also went through the Google to see where these places are and trying to get this sort of perspective. So I thank you for that. You not only give me this man, who is this peace activist, you also give me a history of Africa. You also put me in the context of the struggle of that time. Some of which I can relate, some I need to learn along the line. And of course, they've given to us, a kind of a glitter. As you know, we, the Muslim today, I need not go into that, the situation we are. In a way, I can say this, that we don't have a sense of direction. We don't know whether we're going north, east, south, or west. We don't even see the compass. We're looking at the GPS into this language, right? The only destination that we can hit on is Jannah, paradise. But other than that, we're just groping. We need to pull together. And what the rector has beautifully put ISTAC in that context of giving the direction, the academics in particular. And there is nowhere better than to get discussions of these makers along the way. Now, I want to thank you for this thing, not just giving me the side of Bamba, but also give me the history. And actually, a lot of these books is about the history of that part of the history of Africa, of Senegal, and history of the Tasawwuf, the Sufi movement there. And it is remarkable because often we hear of conflicts, clan conflicts, sectarian conflicts, even NGOs conflict, and Sufi conflicts. But it doesn't seem to appear in Senegal. So I'm very impressed because I have come across of one Sufi group versus another Sufi group, and it became issue. But it doesn't seem to, because in the life of Bamba, he incorporated all, right? His own group is the Muridia, but also the other groups, the other tariqat, also part of him. I said, that's the him. So he started with him being the enveloper, yeah, of all the differences even in the tariqah. Now, if he's able to do that, because as you know, one tariqat versus another tariqat can be very problematic, but he's able to envelop and embrace all. And so, because he's able to do that, so he is the exemplar. Now, what we miss is this exemplar figure. And of course, if you go into Islamic history, as Prophet Al-Atas used to say, the Prophet has to come first. That's as an example. There's education, Islamic education, he said, must start with the university. Because then only, you cannot start with the kindergarten. And in the university, it must start with the postgraduate. That is why we have ISTAC. And it must start with the professors, because there must be a model. And to borrow Confucius, the Chunzu, so that people know where to go. We today have lost this. We have not even known well enough the Prophet. And believe you me, we talk so much about Islam. We talk less about the Prophet. We talk even less about Allah. Even our priorities. And when I was asked somewhere in conversations, what is happening to us? I said, I think, and I fear this, we have moved away from the worshipping of Allah to the worshipping of Islam. Islam and religions have more grip on us than Allah himself. So even this priority, right? And some even make the ummah. And so they fight ummah, they kill the ummah in the name of the ummah, doing exactly what Allah tells us not to do. So I think we need to go back. And I see in the life of Bamba, the emphasis on Allah, the emphasis on the Prophet. So I can relate, because I'm also going through, this fear. And, it is beautiful that in our Salat, many times Al-Fatiha, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim, keep us on that path. Unintentionally, we have, even in a day, how many times we read Al-Fatiha, to make sure that path, that Siratal Mustaqim, we already know it, but we keep on repeating it as a kind of a mantra, because there is this possibility. So Allah has seemed to be fading from the background of the fights of today. So this is this thing. And I like to quote a few things about this thing. You said this on page 16. The legacy of Bamba. It is a spiritual legacy. His legacy on spirituality, which is non-violence, found in this educational system, in his politics, his contribution, right? Legacy of Bamba. His legacy to the African cultural identity. Although he embraced French as a language, you use one word later, but I have missed that. So, but keeping it still in the African identity. So you can speak French, but you leave the African identity. And you said also that he gave an integral practice of Islam. And this I find, as you explained along the line, how he did it. Although this is a Sufi order, a Sufi movement, it was also an economic empire in a way. An economic empire rooted in the needs of the people, not in the greed of the people. Exactly, right? And whatever gifts he had, he passed it back. So he didn't know who gave, he didn't know what the gifts are, it goes back to the people. So as I look at it, I saw this as what? A tariqah with a worldly concern, an economy that is based on needs as versus on greed. And you said that above all is the peace in society. And in a way, when you said somewhere that Senegal has that sort of independence, that atmosphere, it did not see the violence. It reminds me of Malaysia, in a way. We have our own character. We have our ups and downs. We have geniuses, we have also idiots. We have our idiosyncrasies, but we were never violent. There were times when we forgot, misstep. But the judicious, I call it the judicious wisdom and the pragmatic wisdom of the people of Malaysia, my friends from Buddhism, is there, and we intend to keep it that way and grow further on that. So there is this reflection of Senegal Islamization process and the Malaysian Islamization process. It's not going to be, and I like this statement that you quote from him. When the authorities were sort of trying to, to hijack him into their own thinking, and he mentioned names of those great fighters, difficult for me to pronounce them. One statement, he said, "Where are they now?" So all these great heroes who shed blood, self-proclaimed champions of the people, where are they now? It's people like him that lived through his legacy. And coming back to, do I have some? Yes. Coming back to our bringing Bamba into ISTAC. Bamba has given me that inspiration of sustained, we call it sustained resistance to unhealthy, political activities. He's not. I will consider him. I don't know much about Gandhi. I'm not a peace activist, but I love what they're doing. They refer to him as what? Passive resistance. That's the word. But in Bamba, I see more like sustained resistance. Because it's continue and continue. Because the legacy of Gandhi sort of, has thrown away. But the legacy of Bamba lives on. So it's a continuous, sustained sort of resistance. And that resistance is jihad fi nafs. That is the number one. It's all lasting. So I like to see it in that sense. And in this context of what I call popularist explanation of Islam, we certainly need this type of. We need to call our wits together, and under the leadership of Prof. Osman Bakar, who's able to bring the past into the present and into the future for ISTAC, inshallah, God willing, there will be, and inshallah soon, we hope, the GPS of the Muslim Ummah somehow can be seen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ani. Now we go on to the second respondent before I introduce Rotin Pias. He is Assistant Professor and Coordinator, Islam and Buddhism program at the, ISTAC, and Senior Fellow at the Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., USA. Previously, he was Director of the Center for Buddhist Muslim Understanding in the College of Religious Studies at Mahidol University in Thailand. He specializes in religion with a focus on Islam in Thailand and Southeast Asia, and also Muslim-Buddhist dialogue. He has contributed to the Oxford Encyclopedia of Islamic World in 2009, Oxford Dictionary of Islam 2003, and the Encyclopedia of the Quran in 2002, and Oxford Encyclopedia of Modern Islamic World in 1995. He is also special editor of the Muslim World, a special issue on Islam and Buddhism in July 2010. Dr. Yusuf's most recent publications are Multiculturalism in Asia, Peace and Harmony 2018, The three phases of the Rohingya crisis: religious nationalism, Asian Islamophobia, and delegitimizing citizenship, in Studia Islamica, 2018. Nationalist ethnicities as religious identities, Islam, Buddhism, and citizenship in Myanmar, in the American Journal of Islamic Social Sciences, and Islam and Buddhism in Wiley Blackwell Companion to Interreligious Dialogue. Now I give the microphone to
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dato Tansri, Dato Zulkifli, Professor Usman Bakar, His Excellency, no, the Senegal ambassador is not here, Her Excellency Marve, His Excellency Hamid Albar, and friends and colleagues. I just joined ISTAC 2 weeks ago, so I'm very, very new here. I want to add a little bit more to my introduction, because when people ask me, where are you from? I say, give me 2 minutes. I was born in Africa. I'm born in Tanzania. And people ask me, why are you not black? I said, there are people like me there. I was educated in India and the United States at Temple University with Professor Usman and Sister Oni here. And I've been living in Thailand for 30 years. And I speak 6 languages. And I hold a British passport. So I was globalized before globalization. I'm not a child of the Pepsi-Cola globalization. Now, talking about Ahmadou Bamba, I first heard about Ahmadou Bamba some 32 years ago, Farah, when Professor Ali Mazrui did a BBC presentation on Islam and the Africans, a triple heritage. And in that, he had a program number 3, where he talks about the new gods. And I'm going to quote Ali Mazrui here. He says, in Senegal, there is another Mecca for the Muslims. African Muslims make pilgrimages there to see Ahmadou Bamba's tomb. Ahmadou Bamba worked to make Islamic boarding schools where there were instructions in the Quran and the emphasis on agricultural production. And since then, for the last 32 years, I've been waiting to learn more about Ahmadou Bamba. So thank you very much for this excellent book. And this book kept me going because the book is so good that it has short, crisp chapters that does not put the... Yes, very much for that. Normally, you have such a large chapters that you collapse into sleep, and I was not able. You defeated me on that one. So I really like the book for its short, crisp chapters, and it is a much needed in our time when Islam is being negatively portrayed in the media, and also sidelined. The Muslim stalwarts of peace are sidelined today in the media and ignored. And here you are presenting Ahmadou Bamba as peacemaker of our age. I come from comparative religion, and I equate Ahmadou Bamba, besides Gandhi, with Swami Vivekananda from the Ramakrishna Mission, Simon Kimbangu, the Christian preacher from Congo, and Praha Mahagosananda, who was the Mahathera Samakom of Cambodia. And he led the Dhamma Yatra against the communists, after the communist regime in Cambodia. So I see him in that light. So Islam in Africa is highly sophisticated, and Ahmadou Bamba played a very important role, whose influence lives until today, both in the political and the economic dimension, which Sister Kamar already talked about, that he built an economy and a sustainable economy, and the economy of Senegal is based on peanut economy, and this is what is the backbone of this movement. And many of the recent presidents of Senegal are from this Mouridia order, which tells us a lot that he balanced politics, religion, society, culture, economics, and that is why one of the reason is that there was no coup in Senegal, and until today it is a democratic country. So Ahmadou Bamba, for me, seems to have preferred a middle road, no compromise on Islamic principles, but at the same time opting for cooperation with the regime, with the French, where necessary. You know, today when we have conflicts, the parties in the conflicts want to win it all. And here was Ahmadou Bamba saying that I give some and I take some. And that's what he's following the model of Medina, Misaq al-Medina, where Prophet Muhammad himself says, I am agreeing to cooperate with the Christians if they cooperate with me. And in Medina, Prophet Muhammad had the constitution where it was a contract with the non-Muslims. And I very much appreciated that part of Ahmadou Bamba's activity. And as Sister Onya already said, that he saw himself as the follower of Nabi Muhammad. He calls himself Khadim Rasulullah. And he wrote many of the poems or qasaid in the honor of the Prophet. He also very nicely blended the Hakika and the Tariqa movement in the Muridiyya Tariqa. And this is the backbone of the political economy of Senegal today. And so there are 4 points which I take from your book. First is zero tolerance for nepotism and slavery. Number 2, practicing religious spirituality and discipline from street to state house, or from istana to the street. Number 3, respect for democratic political principles of equality, fraternity, and interreligious living. And number 4, and here he challenges Max Weber and Karl Marx, who say that the Africans and the Asians are incapable of becoming economically developed. And he shows that, yes, we can be economically developed without being European, which the president talked about here right this morning. And for me, it was a very, very important that I believe Karl Marx and Max Weber would be turning in their graves if they had known about Ahmadou Bamba. The life example is he's living in, he goes for exile twice, and he continues to have patience. And that is the best part of it. And Senegal today, until today, has not seen the sectarian conflict which has been taking place in other Muslim countries. So, but I have a few issues which I raised being a discussant. The first one is that some Muslims may find it difficult to believe that Bamba had the vision of Gabriel, of Jibreel alayhi salam, and that who told him that you should build your city here, the Touba city, and which has become the center of the Magal, the annual Magal. Normally Muslims would say, oh, how come Jibreel comes to someone after Prophet Muhammad? That people would have issue with that one. Second issue which I take up here is that the question about there are many things in Islamic culture, in Islamic societies. There are many subcultures. We have the Malay subculture, we have the Afghan subculture, we have so many subcultures in South Asia and Southeast Asia. But the question is, how much of this subculture is acceptable from the point of view of Quran and Sunnah? And this is a point which some people may raise. But I think we have to be aware that even we are from wherever we are, and we are Muslim, we do live with our subcultures in the form of languages and our practices and our manners. My third point issue is coming from an Africa. I always don't like the word Black Africa. Because we in Africa, we don't distinguish on that issue. I'm from Africa. People call me as a brother, or sisters call me as a brother, and we don't have this issue. So when you use that word, I was kind of a little bit uncomfortable on that one. I would have preferred to distinguish Africa between Saharan Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, because I come from Sub-Saharan Africa. But on the whole, I remain very grateful to Farah Kimball to write this book, that today, it is after 30 years, I'm reading the dream book which I wanted to read for a long time ago. So she very successfully presents the main face of Islam as that of peace and realistic and practical way of life through the life of one of the great saints of Islam, Ahmadou Bamba. It was indeed a pleasure to read and comment on this book, so let us give her a big hand. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Imtiaz. Now is the time for discussion. I think we'll have until 12 perhaps, for Dato', boleh? Until 12 o'clock for...
No, 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, Professor, please.
Thank you very much. Now this City of Light, Tuba, City of Tuba. The City of Tuba is mentioned in one of the Malay manuscript, and it's considered as a very important tree, which is right in the middle of the city of Tuba. It's in the Hikayat Nur Muhammad, of course. And the leaf of the tree is made to be the crown of the Prophet when he reached the highest position or highest maqam of his spirituality. And this tree is the cosmic tree that created the universe. Now, if we see the symbolism, And the mythology behind this tree of Tuba is not only in Shaykh Bamba's book, but it's also in the Malay tradition. And I strongly believe in the Persian tradition too, but I do not know. Maybe Dr. Laila can mention something about it. So there's a sharing between Senegal and the Malay manuscript. I just want to mention that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, Professor.
Actually, I have a bit of a comment on the Ahmadou Bamba context. I think it would be, I didn't read the book, unfortunately, but I read on Ahmadou Bamba in Arabic because there's a lot of writings in Arabic on him. And one main issue that we need to look at is the context of the Islamic world during this time. Because Ahmadou Bamba was in a time where many people in the Islamic world in Africa and North Africa, in Turkey, in many other places, have the same attitude. And this attitude was, for example, Said Nursi in Turkey, Muhammad Abdu in Egypt, many people. And this attitude was very clear. People looked at the issue of colonization was because of a reason. The Islamic world was declining because of a reason. And this reason was the human being, And this is why Ahmadou Bamba focused on education. And also when we look at the books that he authored, one of the main books that he authored, make two types of books on it, is Bidayat al-Hidayah for Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. So Abu Hamid al-Ghazali was a person who inspires many people at this time. And Abu Hamid al-Ghazali's main issue is education, not education in the sense of education that we know now, the university education, is a human being building. And everybody understood that the collapse in the Muslim world is always taking place when there is a collapse in human being. And the other side is to build this human again. So Ahmadou Bamba goes along this line. And this need to be, I think the context need to be very clear. And that's why also I would maybe recommend, I'm not sure, Prof. Osman Bakar, there's a very excellent book on Abu Hamid al-Ghazali called The First Islamic Revival. It actually came out about 2 years ago in Oxford University Press. And he discussed a context related to this one. Maybe it can be one of the books that we need to look at later. And also another point is very unfortunate, I will concur with Prof. Imtiaz on this one, is we always look at Africa as a place, even when we talk, like, I'm sorry to say, people have this impression, retarded place, or a place which is underdeveloped. Though Islam created many strong civilizations in Africa, historically. And even before Islam, there was a very strong civilization. Ethiopia, Abyssinia is a very old civilization, a very old civilization. I'm not talking about North Africa. North Africa is quite known. But in the heart of Africa, there is a lot of civilizations. So I think Africa needs to have a proper consideration and also proper address when we talk about them. And I think the Muslim scholars in Africa need to be readdressed, and this might be one of the main jobs of our African students. They need to revive the tradition of their forefathers. This is, I think, their main task, not to talk about anybody else. They need to talk about their forefathers. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for everybody here, and especially for the presenters and commentators. I just came to know first, because I am coming from a Francophone country, so I had to know something about Senegal. And we did that through the poetry of Léopold Sédar Senghor, the president of Senegal, who took over after the French left. And then we had in our secondary courses something very special about African authors. Among them was the philosopher, man of literature, Sayyid Hamidou Khan, especially through his well-known the L'aventure ambiguë, the ambiguous adventure. And I was able at that age to grasp something of the kind of spirit that was behind the stability, because of all African countries, whether they are North or Sub-Saharan or whatever, Heart or East or West, Senegal was the most stable country. It had never gone through a military coup. And it always has been through a process of change of power, change of authority, without any bloodshed whatsoever. And I had the chance to meet some people, politicians, the people who were around the, who became later president, Abdullahi Wadi. He was leading the opposition during the time of his predecessor, who took over after Le Parti d'Arsengor. And we were inquiring him. And at that time, I had heard, it was in the 80s, in 85 exactly, in Sudan, because he came with his delegation. At that time, there was a democracy in Sudan, 85, 86. And they wanted to see the experience of Sudan. And I was a translator because he did not know Arabic. The Sudanese, they did not find someone who translated French. So I was involved and I got in connection for almost 2 weeks with this guy. And although he was branded as secularist by some people in the Islamic groups in Senegal, but I felt a deep spirituality, deep kind of commitment to at least the general spirit of Islam. And in that context, I just wanted to ask the respectful author, our sister Michelle, to what extent, maybe this, if you maybe you have the answer, maybe not, I'm not, but I had just mentioned Sayyid Hamidou Khan, and now currently we have a prominent intellectual from Senegal, Suleiman Bashir Diagne, who is a philosopher, who is a man of literature, and both of them, they are writing wonderful things. To what extent these authors and others have been influenced by the teachings of Ahmadou Bamba, because the Aventure ambiguë of Hamidou Khan is very clear, this kind of looking after spirituality, and spirituality that is not just in the thin air, but it is in human relations, how to put human people together. So I'm sad that I have been reading works about political transition, peaceful transition, democracy, but I have not come across a serious study doing with the case of Senegal. They talk about others, military coups, Algeria, Egypt, whatever, but the Senegalese case has not been well addressed, although it is one of the most stable, actually perhaps the only stable country in the whole African continent in terms of political power and authority, and also peaceful coexistence among the different groups of society. We never heard of this kind of clashes, whether tribal, you may hear of this, Rwanda, we know the case, Sudan, we know the case, others, we know the case, but this kind, neither among religious groups, nor among tribal groups. So perhaps you can enlighten us on these aspects. Thank you very much.
Can I'll give it to the author to have the final word.
What's that?
The final word is with the author.
Okay. First of all, I mistakenly omitted to thank you very much to the rector, Professor Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdurazak, and also Professor Dr. Osman Bakr, and all of the staff at ISTAC for organizing this and arranging this. It's such a pleasure to be in this amazing physical space, but also it's a delight for me to be here with all of you. I'm sorry I didn't say that at the beginning. So maybe to address some of the issues that were brought up. First, since it's so fresh, what you were saying about the government in Senegal, I'm not sure I know who you were referring to. Are they Senegalese people that you mentioned? Okay. Oh, how much they're influenced. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, there is a book out by Villalon, Villalon, and he's referred to in my book. But he does talk about the government and how the government is so intertwined with the spiritual orders, and that there's a very unique way that this government in Senegal is run. It's a secular government, and they use many of the much of the French legal system, but they have a relationship, a kind of an intertwined relationship with the spiritual orders and the spiritual leaders. And in fact, many people in Senegal would not want a religious scholar to be president of the country. But they prefer this kind, and in fact, I'm not an expert on this. I'm sure some other people here know more than I do, but in Islam, it's not normal. The religious scholars were not the ones who were the rulers necessarily, but they did their job. And in Senegal, there's an interesting balance in which the government goes to, they pay their respects to the spiritual leaders, because so much of their constituency are followers of, within one of the three spiritual orders. So if they're dealing with a agricultural issue or a political issue or an economic issue, all of the citizenry, in fact, Villalon, if you look him up, I think you'll find a lot of the answers that you're looking for, but he calls the people, the citizens, he calls them citizen disciples, because they all belong to a spiritual order. They all have spiritual guides by which they, lead their lives. And this is what was set up, not just by Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, but the other religious leaders in the Tijaniya and the Qadariya. And they were just equally as important. It's not just the Muridiya, but Ahmadou Bamba happens to be more visible because his picture is everywhere, and he went into exile, so the French in some ways made him more famous, by sending him off. It had the opposite effect that they wanted. So as far as I can tell, people are deeply affected because their whole lives usually revolve around, in some way or another, these spiritual orders and their the leaders of the orders. It's just part of society. So, it's my impression that the political leaders are very much influenced in that way. I hope I sort of answered your question somewhat. And then what you were saying about the revelation and Gabriel, and how could somebody now receive this, or see Gabriel and be inspired, and that's the whole thing also about the teaching of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. And then Sheikh Abdoulaye J, who I met, who was traveling around the world as a politician, who was running for president, and who was a member of the parliament. But he was going around giving prophetic teachings. And he believed that politicians should be like the prophets and should feed the poor and heal the sick. So, and within these spiritual orders, there's a lot of this aspect. and in the teachings of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. And you know, you were, I'm not sure if it was you or which one of you were saying that, you know, the politics that Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, that is inspired by him, it's not so much a tactical kind of way of politics or organizing society, but it's a prophetic. It comes from something deeper. And so that wars or anything, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was a pacifist for 13 years. I mean, he would not take up arms. But when he did, and when they were forced to in order to survive, it was a prophetic impetus. It was not, I want to go chop off the heads of people, you know, or like what we see in the current day, you know, fundamentalism and everything. So even, you know, Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba said that, you know, the last farewell address of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and this is an interpretation by him, and is that the Prophet said, you know, there's no more bloodshed anymore. We have come back into Mecca. We have established ourselves. Islam is not, well, I don't know, in America and other places, I don't, but Islam is very established. And so there's a kind of a tactical philosophy, and then there's a, you know, a prophetic way of being. This is what Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba teaches. And so as far as Gabriel, and of course people believe okay, this was the prophet who was able to see or experience Gabriel. But in the spiritual orders, you know, one is supposed to develop one's character and to live the Quran and the teachings of Islam such that you become like these people, like the companions, like what Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba was trying to achieve. And so once you kind of embody the truth of the Quran, why shouldn't someone be able to see, you know, the angel Gabriel? You know, of course, they're not going to be like a prophet, but you know, there is an inner life and stuff, which is missing from, you know, all of this sort of fundamentalism, and where they're teaching the outward teachings, you know, the order in which you cut your fingernails is, that's, you know, they consider that Islam. But according to these teachings, Islam is about unity, is about oneness, you know, oneness of God. Sheikh Abdullah J, who was member of parliament running for president, his political slogan was Allahu Wahidun, God is one. And every time anyone would see him, they'd raise up their finger and they'd say, you know, God is one. And he taught this around the world for all religions. He had Jewish followers, Christian followers, etc. And Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba never, he still called the French people of the book, you know. So that is kind of the depth of the spirituality, and I hope I'm answering your question. As far as Black Africa, I apologize. I feel uncomfortable when I say that, Black, but you have to understand, like in Mauritania, there's a word for the Arabs, and the Arabs are white. They're called Badat, and I have the word anyway. And so the Arabs are white, and they don't, you know, at that time they didn't respect it. But I'm going to take that what you said, and I don't want to use that because I can understand how that could be yes, offensive. And I think, what does it matter? You know, the color of the skin, and you know, define somebody. It's uncomfortable. So thank you for raising it. And then let's see. Oh yes. And then you were talking about Ghazali and human being building. You know, Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, one of the things he wanted to develop the country of Senegal by helping to develop people. And he wanted people to be able to transform themselves within, transform their hearts and their character. So that is how he saw building a country, you know, or the politics. And this is also how the politics of Shaykh Abdullah J, who I met, was, and he was trying to do this for Senegal too, is that to, you know, people become empowered by the truth and by purifying the heart and being able to discern the truth and the difference between right and wrong. So, yeah, so you were talking about Al-Ghazali in that context. And then you read about Tuba, and, you know, yes, there were other philosophers who talked about Tuba. Did you say in Iran? Yeah, no.
The influence of Persia in Malay civilization and thought.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility. And as you also have learned, Ishraqi's philosophy, the Ishraq, philosophy Ishraq, you may want to connect with the philosophy Ishraq too.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah. So I think I've responded. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Farah Kimball, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you to Dr. Imtiaz Yusof as well as Professor Kamal Unia as well. Now I pass it back to the MC, Sister Sukaina.
Thank you. In a time of spread of violence, it's important to recall and know such people who have made not only peace for a specific period of time, but a peace that transcends from a generation to another generation. This session was very heavy in terms of content, that it led to a lot of questions, and it was very rich that to get to know about such a person exists within our Muslim history that is not well covered in the media, especially when we look into our Muslim world, how is it seen today? As some people say that whenever a Muslim is seen, like the name of a Muslim or something, maybe an element of violence would be seen because of how media have presented Muslims. So it would be very important to read more about these books and to promote it and for others to actually read about it. And for Prof. Kamar, I just wanted to tell you this, that during 2015, when the war was happening in my country, I came to a stage where I realized that I have to stop my studies and go back to my country and try to do something. Our late Dr. Aldila, may Allah have mercy on her, she said, Sukaina, you can do more when you have proper education. Look at Prof. Kamar. At that time, I did not know Prof. Kamar. She is holding a PhD degree and she continued her education. And look how much she is contributing to her society. She has fought a lot for ISTAC and she's still fighting for it. She's trying to drag all students to come to ISTAC, and may Allah bless her for that. As she's not only trying to benefit the Muslim community, but to build a bridge between Muslims and people from other faiths. So we hope that one day we can be inspired by your contribution. So without further ado, we move on the third session for today, which is the interactive conversation titled, Why the Need for Muslim-Buddhist Dialogue in Malaysia? That will be chaired by distinguished Professor Dato Osman Baka. So I think all of us are ready to proceed with this forum, and now without further ado, I pass the mic to the distinguished Professor Dato Osman Baka.
Okay, we'll come to the final agenda of the day, which we title Muslim-Buddhist Conversation. But before I proceed, back to the book of Sister Michelle Farah Kimball, I encourage you to buy the book. I'm doing some advertising now. The book is available on the ground floor. This is lower ground. It's on sale at very special price. If you buy in the bookshop, it's going to cost you 69 ringgit. But you buy here, we sell only 50 ringgit. And with autograph from the author. So it makes it very, very precious. So I invite, please. And you're also contributing to the welfare of ISTAC. Okay. But also, I didn't want to speak about the book because the author gave me the honor of writing a foreword to the book. I have my own estimation and appreciation of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, and you can read from it. So welcome to this conversation. I call it Muslim-Buddhist conversation as our as ISTAC's maiden dialogue on the occasion of the launching of our unit of comparative religion and intercultural dialogue. So we start with this Muslim-Buddhist conversation. So we are able to have this conversation now here because we have Buddhists and Muslims, among others. So let's see. And the topic for the conversation is why the need for Muslim-Buddhist dialogue in Malaysia. In Malaysia, the dialogue between Muslim-Buddhists may be new in the modern period, not that many. I remember one of the, here with us, Benny Leong, we used to be participants at Buddhist-Muslim dialogue in the 1970s, when we were very young people then. So I was representing the Muslim youth movement of Malaysia, the Buddhist youth society. So welcome back. Yeah. So it may be new for Malaysia, but in terms of as far as Muslim-Christian dialogue, that's more. I think there are many events taking place, but less Muslim. There are, but not that many. But in the history of Islam itself, this is not new. The Muslim-Buddhist dialogue in the history of Islam is not new, especially in those countries where Islam used to encounter Buddhism, such as in Central Asia, in today's Afghanistan. And remember what this group of people who destroyed the Buddhist statue in Afghanistan. Yes, right. Yeah, when it was there for thousands of years in Islam, nobody said that it is it is against Islam, the one there. But then suddenly you have a modern interpreter of Islam tend to destroy that. Yeah? It's just like somebody today will go to destroy the what do you call this in Indonesia, the sorry. Yeah, Borobudur. The Borobudur is something our ancestors were wrong in the interpretation of Islam. We are correct, and therefore we can destroy Borobudur. It's something like that. But I'm saying that in Afghanistan and also in China, especially in the Malay part of the world, this Malay-speaking region where we are in now, according to Professor Al-Atas, although it was not at the popular level, but there was dialogue between the Buddhist mystics and the Sufi mystics in such places as Sumatra, the Sriwijaya Center, after all. I mean, so I mean, it is not new. And the writings, just tolerate me a few minutes more before I invite the writings, Muslim writings on Buddhism were also something that was, I mean, you find that. I don't know whether you know this name, Rashiduddin Fadlullah. Rashiduddin Fadlullah, who lived in Central Asia in 14th century. He was a prime minister, but he was also the author of the biography of the Buddha. I managed to get the manuscript from Brother Dr. Imtiaz. So I hope somebody will translate this book from Arabic into English. This has not been translated. But I know I have read writings about Rashid ibn Fadullah. He was a historian. He was the first historian who wrote a global world history of the world. So this man should be studied as far as Muslim-Buddhist relations are concerned. He refers to the Ashabul Buddha. In other words, the companions of Buddha, referring to the Buddhists as referring to Buddha as one of the prophets of Islam. Because according to the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, from Adam alayhi salam until Muhammad, there were 124,000 prophets. 124,000, it's not a small number, it's a big number. Yeah, it's a big number. Then the Quran says, some prophets, we name their names, others we don't. Some prophets, but the message of Quran is that we send prophets to every branch of the human race. So I would say, many years ago, when we had Islam and Confucian dialogue, I said, I can't imagine how Allah can forget the Chinese by not sending any prophet to the Chinese. I mean, they are one of the greatest ancient race. The question of who are the contenders for prophets of the Chinese, that's up to us as to study. But based on the Quran, you cannot simply say that God forgot the Chinese. Yeah? So anyway, today, for Malaysia, Islam is the largest religion, that's correct. But next biggest is Buddhism. The Buddhists account for 20% of Malaysia's population. The next is Christians, is about 10%. So that 10% more, the Buddhists. Our Buddhist friends, our neighbors, our fellow colleagues, workers in the schools, in the offices, together in companies and so on, and yet we just simply coexist. We coexist, but we don't really know the other. We don't know the other. I think it's a shame that after 60 years of independence, we don't know the other. Yeah. So for me, it is very important to have, for us, ISTAC IIUM, to have this center or unit of comparative religion and intercultural. We should be the best in the world as far as comparative religion is concerned. And we shall strive to achieve that, inshallah. So, I want to invite now 4 panelists, but the discussion, the conversation is not confined to them. Huh? I hope I want the others to participate in this conversation. But because we have a short time, but I did ask Tan Sri whether we can extend a little bit. He said, no problem. It's free time, you know. So, inshallah, but not too late. And I want to have just answer this question. Why? Why Muslim-Buddhist dialogue in Malaysia? So the first panelist, again, Professor Kamar Anya, you know, we don't have many people in ISTAC at the moment. And then after that, Benny Liao, and then after that, Professor Imtiaz again, yes, and then the 4th one, Mr. Vijaya Samarigama. Yeah, all right. In the case of Sister or Professor Kamania, we have introduced you already, so you're direct. But since this is conversation, can you just, for the first round, just say not more than 5 minutes to lead the conversation? Yeah? Yes, no more than 5 minutes to lead the conversation. And then Benny, followed by Benny, not more than 5 minutes. And then Professor Imtiaz, not more than 5 minutes. And Mr. Vijaya. No. not less, no more than 5, but doesn't mean less than 2. Okay. So to start with, Prof. Kamonia, why the need for Muslim-Buddhist dialogue in Malaysia? Simple question.
Thank you, Prof. First, I want to welcome everybody, old friends and new friends. We are familiar because we've been on this for a time. I'll start by answering that question in a very simple. Why we need to have Buddhist brothers and sisters? We are born in Malaysia. We live in Malaysia. We work in Malaysia. And God willing, we'll be buried in Malaysia. Our parents were born here. They lived here. And they are buried here. Our children are born here. They're studying here. And they will live here. And their ability to continue as we are depends on our relationship, particularly the Muslim and the Buddhist, because we are the main in terms of proportion. If we fail, what will happen to our? We cannot fail for the sake. So that is why we have to sustain. This nation is our nation. It is our responsibility. And because it is our responsibility, and because it is our nation, we need to work together and build this nation together. So there is this need. Now, from one more perspective, as a Muslim, I'm now not talking just about Buddhists, I'm talking about Chinese. In particular interest to me, there is a saying by the prophets, seek knowledge even if in China. There's contention saying that it is his own words, so he quoted. It took me more than 30 years, or almost 30 years, trying to understand why China. Because the Prophet was teaching Islam. For the first time, Islam came to that part. So everything that we want about religion is from the Prophet. Not even from the Arabs, just from the Prophet himself. Surely it is not on Islam that you want us to seek in China. If it is on metaphysics and philosophy, that's the Greeks. And the Arabs are more familiar. If it is in language, which the Arabs are really involved in aesthetics, in beauty, in art, in architecture, then there is Persia, great civilization. Then mathematics, astronomy, India. I'm talking about 7th century. What was there in China, 7th century? Right. So why to China? Some say it's because of distance, and Islam encourages us to go even to the furthest and to the most remote area. Okay, that's acceptable, fair enough, that we have to seek knowledge everywhere. Then the question is, what is it that we want from China? And that was the main issue. So one day I was listening, I was invited to by Tan Sri Lee Kim Yew to a program by Master Chin Kung. I met him in a couple of places in Adelaide, in Brisbane, in Philippines. Finally, I was able to listen to him. And he was talking about Mencius, the values, the family values. And then I saw in front of me Master Chin Kung, Venerable Master Chin Kung, with his robe, and Ustaz talking and addressing me. In other words, I could relate so well as if he was a Muslim. Ustaz, you know Ustaz, teacher? So this is it. After almost 30 years, it is the ethics. The ethics, the Confucian ethics, which even now the Confucianists of China is bemoaning. They are losing it to communism. It strikes me. So there is conversation. And you know about Confucian ethics, the 5 constant virtues, Li, Ren, you know, they don't know, so we don't have to talk about it. So I'm just showing off. Then the concept of the Chunzu, the model. And the Confucian concept of the Tian as versus Shangti, which I presented in Chengdu 3 years ago. And we hope the conversation will continue. Thank you, Prof. I'm done.
Thank you. Now I invite Benny Lia, but before that, I want to introduce him to you. Benny Liao is the honorary editor of Eastern Horizon, the Journal of the Buddhist Association of Malaysia. He was also the editorial consultant and contributor to the Religions volume for the Encyclopedia of Malaysia. His writings have been published in various journals, including the Malaysia branch of the Royal Asiatic Society. And he has edited 8 books on Buddhism. We have to buy the books and to read them now. He is currently a company director in Malaysia and UK for a multinational corporation. Okay, just brief introduction. Benny.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Tan Sri. First and foremost, I'm not an academic, so I'm going to speak to you purely as a practitioner of Buddhism and as a friend of all religions, as I like to call myself. I think to answer the question, why is there the need for Muslim-Buddhist dialogue in Malaysia? I think briefly I can think of two reasons. One is, as Dr. Professor mentioned, Buddhists in Malaysia constitute like the second largest ethnic group in the country, but there's so little information that Buddhists knows about Muslims. And I would like to think, likewise, Muslims have also very little information about Buddhists. But it doesn't just stop there. I think having little information is not as bad. What happens is, I think there's a lot of misinformation and misconceptions about what Islam is and about what, from the point of Buddhists, and likewise from the point of Muslims. And for the Buddhists, who are predominantly Chinese, and of course, my friend, ethnic Sinhalese, Sri Lankan, and some Thais and Burmese, I think we have also been fed a lot of news, especially in the Western media, about Islam, Islamophobia. You know, so what comes to our mind is that Islam equals violence. So is that really the case? No one really knows. So I think as Buddhists get to know more about what are the core teachings of Islam, and just looking at the title of the book, I've not read Michelle's book, about peacemaking, about peacemakers. And I think there's much more to what people would think about Islam. So I think for Malaysian Buddhists in particular, there's a dire need to understand more so that we can clear a lot of misconceptions. So I think that's a very important point, the first point. I think the second point is that looking at Buddhist teachings itself, as human beings in society, is just a natural tendency that we should have dialogue, right? And what do all human beings have in common? What do we all share in common, right? The best answer, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, all human beings share one thing in common, happiness. Everybody wants happiness, right? Nobody wants suffering. And yet the very core of the Buddha's teachings is about suffering, but not suffering itself, but how do we overcome suffering so that we can find happiness. And that forms the very essence of his first teachings. So I think that being the case, it becomes so important that as human beings with a mind, in fact, the Buddhist word for human being is very similar to the Malay word, manusa. It means manusa, it means a being with a mind. So a being with a mind, we should be able to rationalize. We should be able to feel. We should have affection for other sentient beings, for other living beings, for our fellow human beings. Therefore, we need dialogue. So these are the two very important points. Just to conclude, my 5 minutes is not up, right? To conclude, just to share with you a very simple little story from the Buddhist text itself, which will show you that the roots of dialogue can be found even in the teachings itself. At the time when the Buddha was alive, there were many religions during the Buddha's time. It is said that there are some 62 different types of religious systems or philosophical views during the time when the Buddha was teaching in India, some 3,000 years ago. And there was this religion called Jainism, I think many of you know. So during the Buddha's time, there was this military general by the name of Siha, who for some reason attended the Buddha's teachings, and eventually he became a Buddhist. But he was a great supporter of the Jains. So when he became a Buddhist, he went to the Buddha and he told the Buddha, today I'm your follower, today I'm your disciple. I will have nothing more to do with my former religion, the Jains. What did the Buddha told General Siha? Oh no, you are a man of great importance to the Jain community. Please continue to support them. Support their elders, support the holy people. Please do not, just because you're a Buddhist now, you have forsaken them. So that aspects of mutual respect for people of other faiths, of other religions, other philosophical views, you can trace it back even during the time of the Buddha. So that in the root itself, so I think as Buddhists, it's very important for us to understand what other religions are about, to respect them as human beings, and as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always said, every human being wants happiness. So let us be a cause for the health, happiness, and well-being of all sentient. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Benny. Now, Dr. Imtiaz. Dr. Imtiaz lived many years in Thailand. Although he has a British passport, but you know, he lives in Thailand. He's married to a Thai. His wife is here in this room. He has conducted or participated in dialogues with Buddhists in Thailand. In fact, he teaches at Mahidol University about Muslim-Buddhist relations.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's not, sorry, Malaysian Buddhist friends here who I've met earlier. So nice to see you all here. First, I want to talk about Zulkifl, which the director raised. In Surah Anbiya, it is mentioned that wa Ismail wa Idris wa Zulkifl min as-sadri, kullu min as-sadri. Idris, Ismail, and Zulkifl are from the patient. And Professor Muhammad Hamidullah, a great scholar of the Quran, says Zulkifl refers to Kapila Vastu, where the Buddha was born. This is just for your information. Okay, I have been studying Buddhism for the last 30, 40 years. And for me, the Prophet Muhammad and the Buddha are the great liberators of humanity from oppression and of injustice of all kinds. And this is what makes them kind of similar and comparable. Now, we have been having conversation for a long time, Muslims and Buddhists, for 1300 years. When Muslims met the Buddhists for the first time in Sindh, there was a directive that don't attack the monks and don't destroy the temples. It is there in the history. I'm not making it up of myself. Now, it is very interesting if you look at the history when Buddhism was being established in Southeast Asia. That is from the 7th to the 11th century, Islam was rising in Arabia. So these two religions were rising in two parts of the world at the same time. But unfortunately today, after 9 years of coexistence in Southeast Asia, I dare you, and I've confirmed with Professor Osman and Professor Azra, that today there is no one Muslim scholar of Buddhism in Southeast Asia. And there's no one Buddhist scholar of Islam in Southeast Asia. And that's why we need this conversation. Let me give you some figures here. 25% of Muslim Ummah or community lives in Southeast Asia. 38% of Buddhists live in Southeast Asia. And they are the two major religions of Southeast Asia. Muslims are 42% and Buddhists are 40%. So why no conversation? It is because we have been neglecting each other. When I came to Thailand for the first time, sitting in a taxi, the driver asked me, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm a Muslim." He says to me, "Oh, you have 4 wives." And you don't eat pork. I said, "Oh my God, that is the definition of a Muslim as I generally understood here." I said, "I have 1 and this is more than enough." Okay, so if you look at it, even the language here, the Bahasa Indonesia, Bahasa Malaysia, has a lot of Sanskrit and Pali words, which tells you the underground, the cultural resources which you share here. Puasa, the word itself, fasting, you know, you do Bulan Puasa, and many Swarga and Narak and all those words are very, very Sanskrit and Bali. Now, I look at it this way. For me, Southeast Asia is Mecca of Buddhism, because Buddhism exists in Southeast Asia today. So this is Serambi Mecca of Muslims, but the Mecca of Buddhism is here, right in this place. I even say this, that Thailand is Saudi Arabia of Buddhism. And Thai people get upset on this. I said, what do I mean by Saudi Arabia of Buddhism? Thailand is the most rich and developed Buddhist country and the largest Buddhist country in this region. And same here in Malaysia. You have 20% Muslim Buddhist population here. So there's a large population growth here. So this is the other need for conversation here. But what fears me, I teach at Mahachula Longkorn Buddhist University too. I teach Buddhist monks and bhikkhunis from different parts of the world. And what I fear now is the rise of radicalism in all religions, including Buddhism. And I call it the rise of Asian Islamophobia. Now, this Asian Islamophobia is lurking at the corner, right here in Southeast Asia, where I see that there will be a lots of conflicts going on between these two religions. And those conflicts will not be religious, but of many other factors. So we have to be aware. Asian Islamophobia is denying Asianity of Islam. They're saying that Asian Muslims are outsiders, which is totally hoax. And this has to be addressed academically. So my final point here is that, yes, there is an urgent need for Muslim-Buddhist conversation, especially in Malaysia and Thailand, the two most developed countries in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Okay, I now invite Mr. Vijaya Samarkarama, but let me introduce him first. He graduated as a specialist in the teaching of English as a second language from the Malayan Teachers Training College in Liverpool, England. He later obtained a BA honors in English and linguistics from the University of Malaya and MA drama and theater from the University of Hawaii in the US. He has a long career in teaching and imparting knowledge in primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions, in various institutions of higher learning in Malaysia, such as Malaya, USM, UTM. Although retired, his passion for teaching has seen him returning to teach world religions and theater. World religions and theater in the American degree program of the Taylor's College. Fondly known as Uncle Vijaya. His age is secret.
Oh, 80.
Okay, thank you. He travels widely to give talks and participate in seminars. He gives about, on average, 120 talks per year. I don't do that. Salute. 10 talks per month. 10 talks per month. He has delivered papers at international Buddhist conferences in Japan, Sri Lanka, Singapore, India, Cambodia, Thailand, as well as locally. He is active promoting interfaith understanding among Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists. He assisted the most venerable, the late Dr. Dhammananda, Chief Prelate of Malaysia and Singapore. He has authored 12 books. He has authored 12 books under the popular series A Buddhist Reflects on Death, not on life, on death, which are published for free by the Buddhist Mahavihara with more than 70,000 copies distributed. He has contributed articles to many magazines, including the Catholic News and Eastern Horizon, which are international magazines, but published locally. He has also contributed a section on Buddhism to the Encyclopedia of Malaysia, published in 2005. His former long-serving vice president of the Sasana Viwardi Wardana Society, a 111-year-old Buddhist society that manages the Buddhist Mahavihara and all its Dhammadutta activities. Please welcome.
Thank you so much, Professor. That took 5 minutes to read. I didn't give that information. I don't know where he got it from. But I must begin by saying I'm awestruck. This is the first time I've come to this lovely building and seeing such awe-inspiring people. I'm almost afraid to start speaking, but I will. I would like to begin this to answer this question, why the need, by referring to the brother behind me who mentioned people building. I think if we want to go anywhere in this universe, then we need to build people. And that's where it's not the infrastructure, it's not what is outside, but it's in the hearts of minds. If we believe this and we work on this, because the Buddha says there's only one miracle that he recognizes, and that's when an ignorant person who commits all kinds of wrongdoing because of ignorance, if he is converted to a wise man who practices compassion, that is the only miracle. So the miracle is to fight our greatest enemy all over the world, and that's ignorance. Now, as Buddhists, we are committed to the development of wisdom. If you ask a Buddhist, what is it that needs to be developed for you individually? One thing, that is wisdom. Because with wisdom, it's an arrangement, buy one, free one, we say in Malaysia. If you buy something, you get a free gift. When you develop your wisdom, automatically you get compassion. Compassion is a byproduct of wisdom. And for that, the opposite of wisdom, of course, is our biggest enemy, ignorance. And so I think we Buddhists and Muslims in Malaysia have sort of kept into our separate wells. In Malaysia, we say, katak di bawah tempurung. Yeah, we are two frogs in two different coconut shells, not knowing what the other is croaking. Okay, so the need for dialogue is obvious, that as long as we don't know what the other person is thinking, there will be another of our greatest enemies, fear. The byproduct of ignorance is fear. So if you want to remove fear and suspicion, that is the reason why we need Malaysians. We have lived together for a long time. Many speakers have said this, for centuries, in fact. And up to very recently, or even now, the northern states of Malaysia, Penang, Kedah, Perlis, Kelantan, Muslims and Buddhists live together. They live side by side. They've never been an issue. Yeah. Sadly, over the last few years, Buddhists have joined the club of being attacked as being violent. Sri Lanka, Burma, all right? And how do we get this over? One of the things of not knowing each other, thankfully in Malaysia, we Buddhists and Muslims have never needed to confront. But now we need to go further. We need to know how Muslims think, because it's so important. 20% of the population of Malaysia is Buddhist, and we need very much, especially after yesterday's elections, yeah, there is a huge divide that seems to be, and I was telling Benny in the car, I'm getting worried, all right? And that, again, is fear created by ignorance, and if we want to combat that, and we need to give self-confidence to all our followers, we need to inform them. We need to inform them that basically Buddhism is not a religion. I think you all know this. It's not a religion. It's a way of transformation, a way of transforming the ignorant to the wise. When there is wisdom, everything else will fall into place. Okay? Thank you very much. Dan cakap lagi, boleh. No lah, I've covered myself. Thank you.
Taking up the point of ignorance of the other. This is precisely the purpose of dialogue, to know the other. This, the Quran makes very clear. The reason why, this is in Surah Al-Hujurat, this is apartments, God created mankind into nations and tribes, into different ethnic groups, so that they may know one another. لِتَعَارَفُوا. You say one another. How can you know one another? If you don't meet and talk to the other, so I think dialogue is one of the means whereby we get to know the other better. And this is not true only of Muslim-Buddhist dialogue, but dialogue between Islam and other religions. I think the idea is that through dialogue, we want to know what are our commonalities, what do we have in common. This is the purpose of, should be the purpose of every religion, every group, because there's no other way that we can build a strong nation, a society, unless we have commonalities. Our purpose through dialogue is to broaden the scope of commonalities, because at the moment, based on our current knowledge, this is the set of commonalities. But through dialogue, maybe we are going to be able to broaden the scope of community, because we don't know. Previously, at the moment, we don't know. But once we know, what we assume to be differences become now commonalities. I think through the dynamic nature of dialogue, commonalities become broadened through this kind of activities. And of course, conversely, is to reduce our differences, to strengthen commonalities, and to narrow down, to decrease the differences. Through dialogue, we can decrease the differences, because many of the differences arise because of our ignorance of the other. I think it's a very, very, very important thing. Okay, now we open to the floor now, and then later the panelists can respond. Okay, yes, Professor Fauzan.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Osman. My name is Fauzan. I want to ask a question and comment to Uncle Vijaya. I agree with you that the problem is about wisdom. And I'm from computer science, by the way, and I have this model called DIKW, data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. The highest stage of a computer is wisdom. And this is the lack of problem in IR 4.0. We don't care about the wisdom. And in wisdom, in definition that I put it as, we don't just have this compassionate, but we have merciful. And in Islam, we have this Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of Allah, who are most merciful and most compassionate. Actually, we are growing up. We are begin from data. We process data, become information. Information has value, become knowledge. The highest knowledge is wisdom. So actually, I agree with you that we go to that stage. And we should have people development. We don't just hardware and software infrastructure, but we should have a peopleware. And inside the peopleware is the hardware, Holbun Salim, Persian Hati in Malay. Okay, my question to you, who developed this coconut shell? Is it political party, or is it our society? Is it Buddhist or Muslim, or who should be responsible to liberate ourselves from this tempurung or coconut shell? Thank you.
Okay, let me collect the number of comments first, yeah, so that we can save. Yes, the next one. Okay, number 3, number 4. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to express my 3 points. One, there is a historical example in Bengal history during the Pal dynasty. That time, led by Buddhist religion, Pal dynasty was very much famous in subcontinent in Bengal. They lead a dialogue through a travel in Baghdad. A scholar group were sent to Baghdad to exchange of civilization and cultural and educational introduction between Islam and Buddhism. I would like to draw all history on about the first. Second, How can Buddhist group help to solve some crises in Southeast Asia and South Asia, particularly Rohingya crisis? I am from Bangladesh. Bangladesh is facing the crisis of Rohingya. From Bangladesh perspective, some Buddhist academician, I would like to mention a name, Professor Shukumul Barua, the professor of University of Dhaka, a group of Buddhist people trying to help the Bangladesh government to solve this crisis. Because to create the crisis, some Buddhist group is related as a fundamentalist or other identity. In this perspective, there was a discussion in UIA. Our Tansiri Sayyid Hamid Alvar spoken on the Rohingya crisis. I was a panelist. I proposed to lead a dialogue, United Nations, YC, ASEAN. In this case, this kind of initiative can solve the Rohingya crisis with the support of Buddhist nationalists. Many countries in Southeast Asia are Buddhist. So I request, and I would like to make a question to our two Buddhist leaders, how Buddhist group can help to solve the crisis in Rohingya.
Okay, next, third question. No, I have to give to those who has raised their hands first. Huh? No, wait. Huh? At the back there,
No, I move.
Oh, you have moved forward, sorry.
Yes, Prof, sorry. My name is Kon. I'm from BMSM, the Buddhist Missionary Society of Malaysia. I'm in the Interfaith Committee. I know that we Buddhists and Muslims has been in dialogue since eon. Can we go beyond just dialogue? What I meant is just now the gentleman was saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, right? And then we Buddhists say, Sukhi Hotu, may peace and happiness be with you. I am struggling in my initiative to reach out to the elders in Malaysia, where now they are living alone. Can we go beyond just dialogue and do something interfaith charity work, visiting the elders with no expectation of anything? You know why, sir? It's because in our teaching, the three approach to Buddhism is learn the teaching, practice the teaching, and then realize the teaching. And it is through the realization of the teaching, wisdom developed, we transcend all skin color and religious affiliation. And I would like to hear both Muslim and the Buddhist leaders here, what they think about interfaith charity work. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4, and the last before I ask the panelists to respond. Yes, please.
Raise my hand many times.
Are you able to be here until the end?
Yes.
Actually, I have been told about your presence. Inshallah, we will give you later. After this one, we will invite you to say something about on behalf of Senegal. Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Mambakar. My name is Amir Zekrgu. I've been a professor of ISTAC for many years, and it's really a happy moment for me to see that it's rising again, and about this dialogue, which is important, very important. I think I know little things about Buddhism. I was the member of first Buddhist expedition of UNESCO in Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha. And I have been to Japan as a part of the scholars for Japanese Buddhism. And also I've lived in India and learned Hinduism and Buddhism, Sanskrit, Urdu, and Hindi to learn the Oriental religions and art. So I think this is fascinating. I don't think we need the dialogue because we are living in Malaysia. We need the dialogue because we have become narrow-minded. I'm talking about the entire world. We have not been so narrow-minded ever. When you study history, you find that our ancestors were more accommodating about their neighbors, about others, what we call. Now we are more ignorant than ever. If someone calls himself a Muslim, he usually is expected not to know about any other faith, about his own, and vice versa. And this is really a catastrophe for humankind. So I think starting a dialogue is because we are incomplete. We do need dialogue, not only because there are political problems that we would like to overcome, but because it's the right thing to do. We are, let me use Maulana Rumi's an example. He gives an example of three travelers traveling together, one a Persian, one a Turk, and one an Arab. Together they lose their money and they have a little money left and they're all hungry and they want to spend this money on something to eat. The Arab goes for inab. He says, I want inab. And the Persian will go for angur. Angur, you know, it's the same word you use in Malaysia. It's grape. And the third one, the Turk, will go for uzum. And they start fighting, not knowing that everyone was asking for grape in his own mother tongue. And we are those people with these problems. You know, when I spoke to people, to Buddhist monks in Kapilavastu in Nepal, birthplace of Buddha, when it was the time of Zohar prayer, I left and stepped aside to pray. And I looked later on at the monks. They knew perfectly what's happening because they were aware of the concept of worship. It's, you know, they know what's going on. We know what's going on there. And when I was a kid, I was sent to a Catholic school, so I know what the Christianity is about. It's all about faith, and everyone wants to become a better person. The problem is that now we are dividing ourselves, and our colors are becoming more important. And the association with a certain country or a certain faith in which we are born, we didn't have a choice. Many of us Muslims did not have a choice to become Muslim or otherwise. Neither the Buddhists nor the Hindus, okay? So now, we didn't choose our color scheme. We didn't. So now, if we go back to our core, if we do go back to our core, and this is an auspicious event, I really hope in the bottom of my heart that this is not just a slow movement. Knowing Prof. Osman Bakar for a long time, I hope it's not, because I know he means what he says, and I hope that things will work out better. I don't have a specific question, but I'm just telling that this is very, very important, and not for Malaysia. This is something we need all over the world, because we are more ignorant than ever and more narrow-minded than ever, and we need to open up. Otherwise, catastrophe is about to happen, and we see signs of it in America, in Trump, in other people, you know, that they think about their country. We first, America first, Malaysia first, Iran first, this first. If you have too many firsts, then we don't have any choice. Thank you.
Second.
narrow-mindedness, I feel compelled to speak up. And I agree with that brother over there. We need to go beyond just dialogue. You know, we've been having this interfaith dialogue for years now, but dialogue is such a big word. It's for academicians, it's for politicians, it's for people who are so well learned. Why not, while this dialogue is going on, we reach out to the people on the street? You know, after so many years of interfaith dialogue, I know that the Buddhists, they love to print free CDs, free books, free magazine, free pamphlets to correct merits, if I'm not mistaken. So every now and then I go to restaurants, I see something printed by the Buddhists, I pick it up, so interested to learn something, and there you go, it has for distribution to non-Muslims only. So I put it down. And sometimes I get messages from friends, you know, very interesting topics, dialogues at Buddhist Jam Fellowship. There's one coming up, I think, in the next few days by Datuk Sri B. I was interested to go for non-Muslims only. When are we going to stop doing this? I think it is time we lift up the tempurung and do the real work instead of just having dialogues and dialogues and dialogues up there. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I invite among the panelists, if anybody wants to start first. Vijaya, Mr. Vijaya, yes.
Please allow me just to handle the first one, and everybody has a chance. Yeah, the one about how this wisdom can be translated into real terms. I, as an educationist, believe that the first line of attack should be the schools. I think the older generation, they are all too tight, too fixed in their ways. So we should forget them. And if we are talking about the schools, then of course we have to concentrate on teacher training. Our teachers must be in the forefront of this thing about all inclusiveness, one, and understanding. We're very frightened of religion. Other things we are okay. But when it comes to religion, we're very afraid to be able to share. So we got to break that with the teachers, and then the teachers will influence the generation. Now, the other one is it top down or bottom up? I believe bottom up. And that's where Brother Khan's suggestion that we activate, don't talk about it. But I also want to explain this for non-Muslims only. It was a directive. I think it was in the 70s or something that too many people were distributing things to convert. So the government said, we have to put this is for non-Muslims. It was, in a sense, to protect the Muslims. And that is why. And we are also very, very upset about having to say that. Knowledge should be for all. And there shouldn't be fear when it comes to. But this is a point we need to address. Okay? And somebody talked, that brother talked about grapes. I think we all know the story of the blind man and the elephant. And I think that's what we need to do. Again, ignorance. The blindness is ignorance. And wisdom is when we are sighted. When we are sighted, we will see only one elephant, not me. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Professor Anya?
It's very briefly, maybe not so brief. Just talking about working together. Yeah, I was invited for the Sai Baba. The Sai Baba movement, as you know, is a very active, social-oriented, welfare sort of movement. I was very impressed by this gentleman, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, very average sort of a person, but he and his group went from more than 20 years, I think, at least 20 years, Dr. Amin helped me, to the place in Kubu Baru, now I forgot my. These are the terribly handicapped group. Sahara, yeah. Kubu Baru, yeah. And they have been going there. So these are our brothers and sisters who are very, very badly handicapped. They can't even look after themselves. And they are matured people also. There's not enough people to do the work, you know. So they will come with like the fire brigade to clean up the beds. Most of the beds are so soiled. Imagine these people are like that for one whole week on soiled beds and, you know, very... And he started this with a couple from... Then some Muslims, Ustaz, came to look, and they came together. And then others came coming. It was on the video. I was very impressed. At that point of time, I know this person who started, and all these people are there, they are far, far greater than me. I feel very humble in the presence. Here we talk, we're floating up there, and these people clean, you know, the defecation and everything. All the pillows had to be removed. Most of them had to be thrown. And they have to use the hose, the fire brigade hose, to do the cleaning. It's like that. So this is the type of work. Now, another one is a little bit off. This was on the political talk. Yeah, I won't mention these things, but this was about the hudud. You know, non-Muslims and especially political minded are very sensitive about this. Until one of my former students said, "Why are you against this? Whereas it is in the 10 precepts, and the Hindu, and what you call that, yamas and niyamas, and cardinal, the great, aduh akbar, now I'm losing my grip. No. The vices, the cardinal virtues and the vices of Christianity, the 7 deadly sins, 7 deadly sins and 7, is all part of that wrapped in different. This is about the great. So you're attacking the other side about the thing that your own religion promotes because the word is hudud. Thank you very much. This is ignorant.
Yeah, talking about ignorance, you know, I've been reflecting on this word, and I think today we are living in the age of compounded ignorance. Really, the state is so bad because of social media, and this is the biggest challenge for all of us living in this age. Now, if you ask me, what did I learn from Buddhism? I've been studying Buddhism for 40 years or something like that. I just learned one thing: do good, support good, and always support good, do good, and always encourage doing good. And that is what I appreciate the most. And I'm with you. Yeah, I agree with you. So the problem, the issue is, I agree with you also that we need social work. In Thailand, what I would do is take my students, Muslims and Buddhists. I don't distribute food, because suddenly if you distribute food, the issue will come out. Is it halal or not? So I give them 100 baht each and say, go and eat wherever you want to. But reading to the blind people, helping the disabled, this is the way to bring up natural compassion. And I think we need to start those kinds of activities across the Youth Alliance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benny.
Having listened to all the comments, I think we have to understand that dialogue is a journey. We're expecting that we're going to achieve certain things at a certain point in time. It's not going to happen. So it's going to be a continuous journey. And I think the fact that we are still talking about dialogue means that we all believe that there's a need for dialogue. But the problem starts because we are talking to the converted. Right? Those who believe in dialogue, those who believe that we should overcome ignorance and understand and have mutual respect for others, it could be the minority. And in a society, we look at Southeast Asia, or even like in Malaysia, there's called the what is the word? The small minorities syndrome. I think the fear of the major.
Fear of small numbers.
Fear of small numbers. Yeah, fear of small numbers. Sri Lanka, for example, majority are the Buddhists, but the fear is that the Muslims small. How many percent are Buddhists? Are Muslims in Burma? Maybe less than 5%. 4%, right? So it's a fear. I think similarly in Malaysia, the Chinese population has been decreasing, isn't it? So what is the fear? The prime minister is Muslim, the deputy prime minister is Muslim, the key portfolios is Muslim. The only thing that was a bit off was maybe the finance minister is now not a Muslim, but he's a Malaysian anyway. So that's the fear of small, yeah. I like that's the word. So I think we have to look at when we talk about dialogue, right? So I think those are issues. Unless you can overcome those issues, and unfortunately, it is a power relationship. It's a power relationship, and I think there's very little if you are not the power elites. You can't do much. But whatever it is, I think it's important that we continue this dialogue, right? Whether we can take away this only for Muslims or for non-Muslims only, you know, is something the power elites will have to come in. I don't think BGF or anybody can decide on that.
Thank you, Benny. I'm sorry, friends. I have to, because of time, I have to stop here. But before we pass this to the
2 minutes.
MC.
2 minutes, doctor. 2 minutes.
1 minute.
Huh?
1 minute.
Not enough.
Sorry?
Not
Wait.
enough.
Question?
Yes. For Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I'm Dr. Muhammad Turba Saeed, Assistant Professor from College of Education, Head of Islamic Education Unit. I would like to ask you, you're talking about wisdom, and if you meet someone, who teach you the wisdom, you will follow him or not?
Can I suggest, after this event, okay, over lunch, please address this Mr. Vijay. I'm sorry because it's already past 1 now, but I just want to impress upon you that for us here, of course, for ISTAC here, this is the beginning. I know for you all not the beginning, but for us, it's the beginning. It means that we promise more to come. Inshallah, we promise more to come. And then we invite you again. The important is that why do we have dialogue? Why we have dialogue is not only for intellectual curiosity, academic exercise, no, but we address both. In other words, we don't just say either or. The thing that as an academic center, institute, we have to pursue an enlightened comparative religion program, because we don't really have in the world today that comparative religion centered in one place, no, in terms of the school, all the religions together. We don't have that, and we hope we can go into that thing. Now, the other thing is that whatever we discuss here, there must be larger goal. The objective, of course, is for the good of society, for the good of Malaysian society, and good for humanity at large. That is the thing. It must result in some sort of action-oriented thing. Knowledge and practice. Each strengthens the other. I think that is the idea. Interactive. Basically, it's interactive, dynamic relationship between theory and practice. Knowledge and amal. Ilmu and amal. I think that is what we want to do, inshallah. So, thank you to all the panelists for your contribution. Okay, MC.
Thank you. If you have wisdom, you get compassion. It's just like buy one, get free one. Yes, of course. I'll pass the mic to him in a moment. Just okay, all right. So okay, so you want to go first? Just for a while, I'll call you on stage. I just want to present a token of appreciation, and then we call you. Would you like to speak on your place, or you would like to speak?
It's okay. I can speak.
All right. So we have Mr. Diop, a representative from the Embassy of Senegal, would like to give a bit of comments about the book, especially after hearing a lot of questions coming from Prof. Walid, Prof. Nisawi, and Prof. Imtiaz. So we would like to hear from you as representing from the embassy, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I will be very brief. I know that we have a problem of times. I would just like to say that I'm here today to represent my ambassador. Unfortunately, we received the invitation a little bit late, and at that time she was already programmed some other appointments. That's why she could not be here. But she wanted to come because this event is very important for us, Senegal, because the man, the Sheikh, for whom the book is written is very important in Senegal and even in Africa. So that's why this event is very important for us. I would just like to be very brief and say that I'm not alone here today as Senegalese. There are some other students, Senegalese students, who are here today with us to be present to the events also. Talking about Serigne Touba, I would just like to talk about 3 miracles. Serigne Touba is the man who prayed on the sea. Sometimes when we talk to somebody that people can pray on the sea, you cannot believe it, but it happened. Serigne Touba did it. If we do the total, Serigne Touba is Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. We call it Serigne Touba in our country. Yes, he have many names. Others call him also Hadimur Rasul. Yes, Hadimur Rasul, Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba, Serigne Touba, all are names of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. So if we do the total of the writings of all the books, all the reflection Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba did, we can have 7 tons. The weight can make 7.5 tons. So it means that he spent all his life to write, to reflect, and writing. Third things, Serigne Touba have the biggest, it has been created after him, the biggest religion event in Africa. Every year, millions of people come to the Grand Magal of Touba. So that is the 3 miracles I would like to talk, and to express my happiness today to participate to these events, because me also am among the brotherhood of Serigne Touba, of Shaykh Ahmadou Bamba. So thank you very much, and congratulations to Madam Kimball. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks, and hopefully maybe some of ISTAC students would get a chance to go to ISTAC and to go to Senegal and visit the place and maybe experience and get to learn more about it. So to get back to the feedback of the last session, is that there is a lot of talk about the importance of dialogue, but it's not only about dialogue, but it's about walking the talk. So within the Malaysian context, Dr. Danielle used to say in our class is that the elder generation used to, during their childhood, they used to study together in the same school. So that gives them the interaction that this generation is lacking, because each race or each different people of different religion go to their own schools. So the lack of integration and the lack of interaction with one another is the main issue. It's not only about dialogue as the elites would need, but also it would be about what's going to happen next. And it's good to have feedback coming that you would like to take it to the next step, and hopefully we get to see it soon. So from our side, we would like to extend our gratitude to you by presenting a token of appreciation from our side. With that, I would like to invite Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of IIUM, to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Vijay Samragvaram from the Buddhist Gym Fellowship, Malaysia. Mr. Bini Liao, the editor, Eastern Horizon, Journal of Buddhist Association of Malaysia. Thank you very much. We really do hope that you have gained new insight from our attempt at creating a platform and for introducing the potential interculture and interreligious conversation. As the saying goes, to every beginning, there is an end. But we would like to make an amendment to that and say that this is not the end, and we hope to see you in the next session. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached to the end of our and your program. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to you for joining us today. And I would like also to thank the participants for the undivided attention. And we would also like to apologize for any shortcomings coming from our side. We will now end our session with the recitation of Tasbihah, Kafara, and Surah Al-Asr. Thank you, and you're all invited for lunch in the next hall. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Photo? There will be a vegetarian lunch, and before proceeding to lunch, can we have a group photo for all the guests?